Maverick News presents The Rick Walker Show. Defrag your mind.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Walker. Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. Welcome new viewers from all over planet Earth. All you terrestrials, tonight we'll take a look at something that might be extraterrestrial. But that's not our main story tonight. Our main story focuses on something that is being dubbed HateGate. This is all about Diagolon, the Freedom Convoy, Jeremy Mackenzie, the founder, leader, and creator of the Diagolon flag. New documents have come out because of Freedom of Information requests, which show the government knew all along that Diagolon did not pose a national security threat, and yet they still proceeded to have police target the group and ultimately end up putting Jeremy Mackenzie in jail, charging him with a variety of things. Well, tonight, the documents that have been released by, well, I guess the group, and more specifically his lawyer, Karim Assad, show that the government was told by the RCMP that Diagolon really was not a threat. So we'll have a fair bit on that tonight. It is a story that is being, I guess, described by those involved, and in particular the members of the Diagolon online social group, as a bombshell. Also tonight, the U.S. government, John Kirby, having a little trouble explaining their decision to release funds to Iran in exchange for American prisoners. Justin Trudeau, asked about possibly resigning. We'll have his reaction. All that happened during a news conference dealing with the Trudeau government's new plan to address Canada's housing crisis. And we'll also show you a clip from a few years ago from Jane Fonda talking about Trudeau. It's revealing. And we'll tell you what's going on in New Mexico with that suspension or attempted suspension of firearms carry in that state. And we'll also tell you about the latest developments in the Donald Trump federal criminal case regarding the way classified documents were handled by the former president. All that and a whole lot more coming up right here on the Maverick News Channel. Don't go away. I'll be right back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So we will get into that story about Diagolon, the Freedom Convoy, but I'm gonna hold back and share that with you. It's somewhat involved. There's a lot of information to share with you. I also dropped in on a Twitter space that was held earlier today on that subject. Jeremy McKenzie was part of that, and I'll share some of the highlights from that exchange that involved quite a large number of people this afternoon discussing this document dump and subsequent publication of an article by Jeremy McKenzie's lawyer and the distribution of that story in almost like a news release form that has been picked up by at least a few mainstream media outlets, although not the majors. We'll get into that. But first, I want to talk a little bit, stay right in Canada for the moment, and talk to you about Justin Trudeau and his housing plan. Today, he addressed what is a growing crisis in this country with a plan that really he had promised to roll out quite some time ago, but he's bringing it to the forefront now, no doubt, because he knows something needs to be done to address skyrocketing housing prices, short supply at a time when his immigration policies are increasing the population and putting incredible pressure on the housing market. So he's doing this now ahead of the next federal election. Whenever that might be, we don't know exactly. He could call it any time, but he won't. He won't do it right now because the Liberals are sinking in the polls. He is not very popular. The economy is struggling. Inflation is a big problem, and this is how he plans to address it.
Si on travaille tous ensemble. When we launched the $4 billion Housing Accelerator Fund, a fund to build more homes faster, we told municipalities that they could access those funds with bold plans to eliminate red tape and remove barriers. On a été clair qu'il y a trop de réglementation municipale qui rend ça difficile de bâtir des logements pour nos communautés. On a été clair que les règles locales doivent changer et que les gouvernements locaux doivent être plus ambitieux. Et on va être là pour soutenir leurs ambitions. So here we are today with a very first agreement under the Housing Accelerator Fund. After we launched the fund, Mayor Josh Morgan and his team got to work. When we saw that Josh's plan was ambitious and serious, we said, okay, let's get him funding so he can fast-track the building of more housing here in London. Josh, the Accelerator Fund was created to build more homes faster. And of all the mayors across the country, you were the fastest to step up with an absolutely visionary proposal. We put out framework of ambitious things we needed to see from municipalities in order to access this funding, to look at all the various barriers that are slowing down the construction of housing supply at a time when it's needed. And we asked the hardworking people at City Hall and in the mayor's offices to step up to see what were those barriers that we could eliminate, how we could get shovels in the ground faster, how we could get people into homes, particularly affordable homes, particularly homes near transit infrastructure as quickly as possible. So based on Josh's success and the announcement we're making right now, I want to challenge other mayors right across the country to step up with their proposals too, so we can get building more homes, increasing supply, and lowering the prices for families. La promesse du Canada, c'est d'améliorer la qualité de vie à chaque génération. Ces temps-ci, le monde traverse un moment difficile. Plus que jamais, il faut continuer notre travail pour s'assurer que la promesse du Canada tienne. The promise of Canada. It's one that says that every generation gets to benefit from the hard work of the previous generation and succeed even more. Well, for far too many people, that promise of Canada seems under threat. And that's where Ariel and Peter and Sean and I and our entire team are focused on securing that promise of Canada. The promise that when you work hard, you can get ahead. That's what it's all about. We're focused on building more homes by working with all orders of government, with Indigenous communities, with labor, and with private and nonprofit partners, because that's what it'll take. Everyone working together. I look forward to our caucus retreat this week to continue this work, and we'll have more to say very soon on our plan to make life and housing more affordable for Canadians.
Sorry, my microphone was muted. The thing to remember here, and I'm editorializing now, is that it's his economic policies, his immigration policies that got us into this mess in the first place. And the policies of previous governments that also embraced immigration policies that brought, a lot of people here from other countries and put a lot of pressure on the housing market. You bring more people, they need places to live. If you don't have enough housing supply, prices go up. That's what we're dealing with. And it does fuel a housing construction boom of sorts, but we haven't experienced that because the Trudeau Liberals, with their economic policies and such, it just hasn't been enough. They haven't had the right policies in place because largely, honestly, of regulations. If you're a new home builder in any part of Canada, the red tape you have to deal with as a contractor, even just, as a plumber, an electrician, as a developer for a new subdivision, or even to build condos, the regulations are just mind-boggling. I don't know how they keep it all straight, honestly. So you combine that with, issues surrounding where you can build, how you can build, restrictions on land use, and so on. You have what we have right now, a recipe for a housing crisis, and that's what we have. So it's his policies that got us into this mess. Now he's trying to present a solution, but I don't know why anyone at this point would believe that anything he's going to do is going to alleviate the problem. I think the main reason he's attacking this is because Poilievre, leader of the Conservative Party, his main opponent, and the man most likely to become the next prime minister of the country, has been making housing one of the main planks in his campaign platform. And he's been hammering on it with great success. That's why he's rising in the polls. It's all about the economy with Pierre Poilievre. And he knows Canadians, especially middle-class Canadians, have seen a huge decline in their standard of living. People are very concerned about rising prices and rising housing prices in particular. Especially if you live in a big city like Toronto, I do not know how people survive there. Inflation has gone nuts. Still in the range of 3.3 officially, 3.3%. The target is 2. And I can tell you that in real terms at the grocery store, year over year, I'm not talking month over month, year over year, a year ago, you can take those prices and compare them to what we deal with now. And I would say not uncommon to see between 30 and even 50% additional cost on the prices at the grocery store that I see in real terms. That's a massive hit to anybody who is especially living on a fixed income, relying on their pension money, people who have very limited incomes because they're on social assistance. The most vulnerable are suffering the most under Justin Trudeau, a man who came to power as a liberal, promising to do more for those who are the least fortunate. That's, I suppose, today why he was asked at that same news conference about resigning. Well, don't get your hopes up. This is how Justin responded to that question today.
Personnellement très défavorable. Il y a même une
The
majorité
polls are
canadienne dans un
personally
récent sondage
unfavorable
dit,
for
ce serait
you.
le temps de M. Trudeau de laisser sa place à quelqu'un d'autre.
Would it be
Parce que
time,
c'est
as some
pas
people are saying, for
si
Mr. Trudeau to cede the way to
On est
someone
à
else?
2 ans des prochaines
What do you have to
élections.
say about that?
Moi, je continue à faire mon
It's 2
travail.
years
Il y a
until
beaucoup
the
de
next
travail
elections, and I will
important à faire
continue
pour
to do
livrer
my
pour les
job.
Canadiens
There's a lot of
dans ces
important
moments
work to be
difficiles.
done to
Et
deliver for
je
Canadians in these
reste
difficult times.
enthousiaste et acharné
I am still very
par rapport à ce travail.
enthusiastic and looking forward to working hard.
personnellement très défavorable. Il y a même une
The
majorité
polls are
canadienne dans un
personally
récent sondage
unfavorable.
That was in London, Ontario, my hometown. So he says he's not going anywhere anytime soon. I didn't think so. I know a lot of people have been speculating. There seems to be, a rising wave of opposition to having him remain in place for the next election from within the Liberal Party itself. But I said before, I don't think he's going anywhere. What else is he going to do? Not that he would starve or end up homeless, at least. Well, I don't know. Sophie kind of kicked him out, but we'll see. He's not going anywhere, folks. And even though there is a growing movement to have him resign from within the party itself, and you're seeing that, manifest itself through questions like the one we got in from the mainstream media today. Even though we're seeing that, no, it's his ego. He has still a lot of support and power. His name alone will carry him in that position, I think, for as long as he wants to be there. It won't matter. It won't matter what kind of scandal comes forward, short of him being charged for something as heinous as maybe first-degree murder or something along those lines in real terms. He's not going to go anywhere. The blackface thing, SNC, Lavalin, you name the scandal, nothing has been able to remove him from his position. Even if he slumps in the polls, even more, he's not going anywhere. And don't kid yourself. They have tricks up their sleeves. This one and that one, and the guy over there, and that liberal strategist over there. They all have tricks that they will be employing heading into the next election. Do you want to know how you're going to know there's going to be an election? People keep saying, when's the next election? I'll tell you how you can tell. It's very simple. When he starts traveling across the country and starts handing out money, writing checks for programs, that's it. This is a start. But if it continues, you'll know he's going to call an election. That's the way they do it. They buy the votes. They hold back for a while, and then just before an election, they roll out all these programs, and they say, we're going to give you this much money and so many billions over here and so many millions over there, and this community gets that, and this guy gets that, and this program will happen over here, and this economic sector will benefit, like he's saying right here, right now, with this what was it, $4 billion? Oh, there's another $4 billion for the housing industry. So if you're a developer or someone working in that sector, oh, well, I better vote Liberal then to get that money for me or my company. That's the way it works. That's the way the politicians do it. They hand out the cash just before we go to the polls, and it works. It really does work. I don't know what else to tell you, but that's just what's done. So stay with me. I'll have more coming up right after this.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Okay, so just a reminder that if you would like to support the channel, you can do that by donating at freedomreporters.com. Let me put that up on the screen for you. freedomreporters.com, or you can also donate at maverickdonations.com. Also, last night I showed you one of these, and I do actually I found one more of these. I have one of these projectors. Takes 4K input, full high definition, high quality, HDMI, USB. You can hook up phones to it, all kinds of different video sources. Any donation tonight to the show of $100 or more. Well, the first donation of $100 or more, and I will ship you one of these video projectors, the last one that we have, actually. Yeah, they're awesome. You can project them onto anything. You can use them on a big screen or a giant wall in your house, set up a home theater system with it. You could use it outside, as many people do. It's small enough to take outside for an outdoor drive-in movie. Set it up in your driveway and project it onto your garage door. Invite your neighbors over, get all your cars, have the kids out. You have a drive-in or a movie in your backyard outside. That's what a lot of people use them for. So it's pretty cool. Other people use them for things like, projecting Halloween scenes onto windows or onto their houses, things like that. And we use them right here in the studio as well. I've used them at trade shows. So they're really actually very high quality, $100 or more, and that projector is yours. So yeah, you can donate at freedomreporters.com. That's the easiest way to do it. Now, you can also donate to the show in the Rumble Rants over on the Rumble channel. Please subscribe on Rumble if you're over there. If you're not over there, please consider heading over and checking out the Rumble platform and subscribing while you're there. We need to grow on that platform. And if you're over on Facebook, please like and share. YouTube, yeah, subscribe there too. Ring the notification bell. We're still only broadcasting on our secondary backup channel. We're letting the other channel, the main channel, we're just letting that lay fallow. Just giving it a rest for a while to recover its health in the face of YouTube censorship. Anyway, let's move on, shall we, to this story about Diagolon. Twitter Space today, I dropped in on it. It was a discussion hosted by a Twitter, a guy on Twitter who goes by the name The Ferryman's Toll. I think many of you probably know who he is. His real name is Alex. And he hosted this session, this forum on Twitter Spaces, well attended, a lot of people there. I received a link, so I went over to check it out today. I was in on that and listened very carefully to what was said. And it's all about Diagolon and new documents that have been released by the lawyer representing Jeremy McKenzie, the founder, the creator of the Diagolon online social group. Diagolon, of course, was targeted by the federal government during the Freedom Convoy. They used Diagolon, the federal government did, as justification for, in part, justification for invoking the Emergencies Act, the modern day equivalent of the War Measures Act against its own people. That's what Justin Trudeau did during the Freedom Convoy. And they cited Diagolon as one of the main reasons, saying that they had information from the Canadian Anti-Hate Network that Diagolon is a far-right hate group, an accelerationist group filled with white supremacists and neo-Nazis, something that Jeremy McKenzie has strongly denied, but they targeted Diagolon anyway. You've seen in tonight's thumbnail an image of the Diagolon flag, which Jeremy McKenzie says he simply created on a phone by swiping in a graphics pro app on his phone from one corner to the bottom corner and made a black flag with a white stripe through the center, which actually is kind of a cool flag. But the bottom line is he says that Diagolon is a meme. Well, it all centers around not just the Twitter Spaces forum today, but on these documents obtained under a Freedom of Information request from, I think it was Jeremy McKenzie's lawyer, Kareem Assad. And it was a successful request with over 1,000 pages released. And shown in these pages were documents from the RCMP, which indicate they notified the federal government that Diagolon did not pose a national security threat. Now, in those same documents, and I have read some of them, not all 1,000 pages today, but in those same pages, the RCMP did say, however, that their main concern was that there might be a lone actor who might be ideologically motivated to the point of extremism, who might commit an act of violence or an act of terrorism during the Freedom Convoy. So they were worried about maybe a bad actor doing something really bad. So that was certainly top of mind for them. But as the government was contemplating the use of the Emergencies Act, they did receive information, as confirmed in these documents, from the RCMP saying that Diagolon, not a threat, not considered a threat as an organization. But the federal government went ahead and used Diagolon as justification anyway, based on information that they obtained from the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, which had been long established anyway. The Canadian Anti-Hate Network has targeted Diagolon, Jeremy McKenzie, the members of the online social group. The Anti-Hate Network has targeted them for a long time. We had Jeremy McKenzie on this show sharing this exact story a long time ago, following the Freedom Convoy, where he was aware of what they had been doing, the federal government, police, investigating him, and they did obtain warrants and permission to spy on some people. They did. And so this huge document dump has been turned into a couple of things. First, a story written by Jeremy Mackenzie's lawyer and another journalist. And it has been released in the form of a news release and distributed through Canada News Wire. What is Canada News Wire? Just so you understand, it is a service that will take news releases from companies or even political organizations or others if you pay the fee, and they will push them out to media outlets in an attempt to get them to publish the information. So that's what's happened here. This article, news story, whatever you want to call it, was sent out via CNW to mainstream media outlets, some of which did pick it up. Some of them did. I know that Yahoo Finance ran the story unedited. I checked it. Most people don't understand how the news business works, but they pushed this out. Yahoo Finance just took it and published it without even editing any of it, as far as I could tell. So in that respect, it was quite successful. We're talking about it here as well. But here's how this article, this release reads. And this is, again, from, I believe, Kareem Assad, but it says it was provided by Crier Media. Dateline Toronto, the HateGate affair is a piece of investigative journalism. Documents obtained through Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy, FOI POP, reveal shocking details about the RCMP investigation of Jeremy Mackenzie and Diagolon during the Ottawa Freedom Convoy, which led to the invocation of the Emergencies Act. Crier Media journalists Kareem Assad and Elisa HateGate examined 1,000 pages of internal documents that show law enforcement relied on misleading information from the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. Internal RCMP reports show information on Diagolon, Jeremy Mackenzie, cannot be verified or corroborated. And then, quote, the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, CAHN, is cited as the main authority on the group by all mainstream media outlets due to the fact that all information traces back to one source. Triangulation and the verification of facts is almost impossible at the current time. That is from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who said also here, Diagolon, and this is a quote, Diagolon does not pose a criminal or national security threat. So now this is being presented to the public by the Diagolon members, by Jeremy Mackenzie, by Jeremy Mackenzie's lawyer, as HateGate, the HateGate affair. So some of the highlights from this investigation are former Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino made false and alarmist comments, it says here, in a press conference. When pressed for details, he directs media to law enforcement who scramble to produce evidence where there is none. It goes on. Canadian citizens' private information shared with international spy agencies, even as internal reports circulate acknowledging there is no evidence of terrorist activity. RCMP intelligence, it says here, RCMP intelligence analysts took cues from anonymous Twitter trolls involved in criminal harassment. RCMP officer tasked to produce key briefing for top officials to help government decision-making is only 15 minutes, leaving little time for actual research or analysis. The documents also revealed that Canadian intelligence departments relying on Canadian Anti-Hate Network as a single source that banks on the questionable judgment, it says here, calls of inexperienced, ideologically motivated activists with track record of cosplaying online as Nazis and Russian models to gather data and donations. Canadian Anti-Hate Network cloaks its researchers in anonymity and refuses to disclose their credentials, conflicts of interest, or track record, even as they are widely quoted in the media as subject matter experts. It says here also a feedback loop between law enforcement, government officials, and media resulted in poorly sourced information being repeated into fact. Yes, and I'll speak to that in a moment. No conclusive evidence that weapons cache in Coutts, Alberta relates to Diagolon or Jeremy Mackenzie. That, of course, is all about the Coutts boys, the 4 people who remain in custody after more than 500 days after being charged with a variety of offenses, including conspiracy to commit murder, because they're accused of planning to kill police officers. They said during the release of information after those arrests, immediately after, that they found Diagolon patches and other things with the Diagolon symbol on it when they confiscated those weapons out in Alberta. Something that Jeremy Mackenzie questions and did question during the Emergencies Act inquiry when he testified from jail. It also says here that says disturbing look into 1990s CSIS agent provocateur cover-up involving the Heritage Front, which is a white supremacist group in Canada. And information on that is detailed in the documents and in the story that Karima Saad has published online. Let me just bring up this for you to show you. Oh, yes, also, just before we move on, you see that little chart there on the screen? The circular chart, the cops, media, politicians, and then hang on a second here. Oh, there it is. And then in the middle, you've got anti-hate. So, the way this stuff works these days, especially here in Canada, is the Liberal government is funding these non-governmental organizations, nonprofits like antihate.ca, Canadian Anti-Hate Network. What they do is when the government wants to enact a policy or justify a program, they'll defer to experts. So what they'll do is they'll call up an organization like Anti-Hate and they'll say, we need something done. We want to start a program to, combat racism in elementary schools. So they'll have Anti-Hate do some sort of a study. Of course, because they're getting the government funding and they know what the government needs in order to sell the program or the spending or justify money that they're going to hand out to their friends, they'll get a study back, but they know what the government needs. So the conclusions and the recommendations from the study are a foregone conclusion. That information is then handed over to the government in due course. The government then points to that information as being credible and justifies them taking the actions that they're going to take in order to spend all this money or start a new program or do whatever else it is that they feel they have to do. And then they say, well, here's the proof that we need to do it. They do it with polling as well. In order to demonize political opponents, they'll pay for polls and make sure that the questions are worded in a particular way so that it's skewed and they get sort of the result that they want. And then the pollsters, the polling company will, I think, actually cook the data. There was a whole poll that was done about, oh my goodness, now almost a year ago, dealing with exactly this kind of subject matter: racism, online hate, extremist groups. And the polling was worded in such a way that it really did get Canadians who were surveyed to further demonize conservatives, essentially, people on the conservative side of the political spectrum. In any event, that's not a sidebar, but it is an important aspect of what's going on here, because as part of all of this, and I'm going to say that this is actually the start of a campaign. It is not so much, in my estimation, a true journalistic exercise in order to just reveal truth. What I witnessed today in that Twitter Space event was activism, the launch of a political campaign using this information, not to delegitimize what they're doing or to diminish the importance of what they're doing, but understand that the motivation here is not simply journalistic. It's not about getting people closer to the truth. It's about getting people closer to this truth. There's an important distinction. Now, Kareem Assad is actually a left-leaning person politically. You can see that. It's on display, or has been, through her work on social media. But she, I find, is actually able to be fairly balanced. That being said, she is Jeremy Mackenzie's lawyer, represented him very effectively, honestly. I was pretty impressed with just her skills legally. But she has some skin in the game here, and she is a political satirist. She is, I would consider her to be a journalist. Very active. She's for a long time been going to all these freedom rallies, especially the ones dealing with the LGBTQS plus drag queen story time issue, documenting a lot of it. And just in the way that she shows the images, she's able to make political commentary. And some of it is actually pretty funny, and it's and enlightening. So she's not really I wouldn't say she's like a far right anything. She's actually more left leaning, but is able to kind of reach across the aisle, so to speak. Now, here's not just the article, but a long form piece of written work produced by those journalists, Karima and her friend. Here's the cover for it: The HateGate Affair, Unmasking Canada's Hate Industry. The HateGate Affair by Karima Assad and Alyssa Hadigan. It's detailed, man. She goes to town and condenses 1,000 pages into this, I will call it a report. I'll read the prologue. A public safety minister makes false and alarmist comments in a press conference. When pressed for details, he directs media to law enforcement, who scrambled to produce evidence where there is none. An officer is tasked to produce a key briefing for top officials to help government decision-making. In only 15 minutes, intelligence analysts taking cues from anonymous Twitter trolls involved in criminal harassment. Citizens' personal information is eagerly shared with international spy agencies, even as internal reports circulate acknowledging there is no evidence of terrorist activity. An entire country's intelligence department relying on a single source, a source that banks on the questionable judgment calls of inexperienced, ideologically motivated activists cosplaying online as Nazis and Russian models to gather data and donations. A source that cloaks its researchers in anonymity and refuses to disclose their credentials, conflicts of interest, or track record, even as they are widely quoted in the media as subject matter experts. Welcome to Canada. And with further reference to the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, part of the goal here behind this campaign is to have the Canadian Anti-Hate Network banned, have their funding cut. Will that happen? I wouldn't hold my breath. They're diametrically opposed politically. The introduction, I'll just read a little bit of this. This is, as I say, a lengthy work, but I will read this. This story is a horror, tragedy, and farce rolled into one. Its ending, as yet unwritten. The only thing we can control is whether to tell the truth, and we do. Democratic countries distinguish themselves from totalitarian dictatorships through the process of fair elections and by putting the power in the hands of the people. But what if a democratic government wants to stack the deck in their favor? They can't cart people off into the night, imprison them without cause, execute them at dawn. That would violate human rights by any standard, and it wouldn't look good for a leader who prides himself on being a nice guy. The layer of insulation that buffers democratic governments from accusations of authoritarian rule is the pretense of deferral to experts, think tanks, consultants, and academics who can provide perfunctory recommendations to rubber stamp what the government plans to do in the first place. Oftentimes, the expertise is paid for by government money through military defense contracts, public safety and emergency funds, or other sources. If the public resists any proposed policy or legislation, the state can magnanimously defer to the vast knowledge of experts who all concur in unison that unless the bill passes, harm will occur. Danger, terrorism, destruction, loss of your way of life as you know it. And if you still do not comply, stronger measures may become required. Those who resist are vilified through state-sponsored broadcast media and social media smear campaigns. These tactics serve the dual purpose of securing the public's acceptance, or at least acquiescence, and making examples out of dissenters in order to frighten critics into silence. Democratic countries gain the public's compliance with buy-ins and manufactured consent rather than bullets. A more evolved and civil approach, to be sure, but one that carries its own risks. What happens when you run out of villains to justify an escalation to emergency measures? When you want to spook the public into acquiescence, but your well of horrors has run dry, you make them up. This is the story of what can go wrong when such a strategy spirals out of control, and all levels of government and media are complicit in ruining innocent lives. It goes on with this headline: Diagolon is not a violent extremist group. And look at the highlighted quotes from these government documents, internal police documents. Quote, does not pose a criminal or national security threat. Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Again, these released in these documents, dumped and now made public through this work here. Quote, the channels are REMVE plus conspiracy theorists in nature, but not accelerationist. And you're right, no incitement of violence. Some of the usernames have racist references, photos in them, but no criminality. That a quote from Kristen Little to Ashley Chen, July 14th, 2021, subject Diagolon. Again, that would be internal communications from police. And this quotation from Simon Pillay, Inspector OIC Ops 1, Federal Policing National Security, February 2022. Quote, based on the source material and evidence I have personally viewed, we would have a hard time refuting the contents thereof, despite how Diagolon is being portrayed in the media and the House of Commons. Just another example of why our direction to investigators is to be evidence-focused and not caught up in the hype of the media surrounding this matter. And this from Eliane Karen, Director of Ops Team 2, Federal Policing National Security, FNPS, on April 8th, 2022. Quote, I've looped in Inspector Simon Pillay and Inspector J.S. Grenier who are the project team OICs to assist with any discussions your NZLO may wish to have on Diagolon. We do not consider it a right-wing militia group at this time. However, assessment is ongoing, as I understand it. There is more. Diagolon is a distinct entity. As a distinct entity, does not pose a criminal or national security threat at this time. That from the ideologically motivated criminal intelligence team. And this quote, the Canadian Anti-Hate Network is cited as the main authority on the group by all mainstream media outlets due to the fact that all information traces back to one source. Triangulation and the verification of facts is almost impossible at the current time. Based on the information that is publicly available, it is difficult to understand how Canadian Anti-Hate Network can confidently assert that Diagolon is an accelerationist movement that believes a revolution is inevitable and necessary. That from the RCMP. So all of this, of course, focuses on Diagolon and Jeremy McKenzie, who is a Canadian veteran who served in Afghanistan. Also politically active, very. Has been, I don't know if he still is, but likely is still involved with the People's Party of Canada. Not a big fan of the NDP, certainly not a fan of Justin Trudeau, and not really a fan either of Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party of Canada. As a result, targeted pretty heavily by the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, considered by some to be a far-right political activist and an accelerationist worse. Well, you can judge for yourself, I suppose. He's online a lot, does a show called The Raging Dissident. He's a live streamer. And yeah, we've had him on the program. He did go to jail for some things that he said online about Pierre Poilievre's wife. That got him into some hot water. And so he did serve some jail time. Did testify at the Emergencies Act inquiry, which was a review of the use of the Emergencies Act by the federal government, which was required, is required under the legislation itself. If the federal government uses the Emergencies Act, they have a specified period of time after that Emergencies Act is lifted to then conduct a full review, which was done. It was not a trial, though it looked like a trial, felt like a trial. It was not a trial. It was a review process. And the government still has to complete its full report or come back with how it's going to respond to the recommendations that have come forth from that EA. Now, as I say, this whole thing sort of centers around Jeremy McKenzie, this veteran who's politically active, and he has this online group. And as we've told you, they don't consider themselves to be in any respect sort of far right. Now, they are certainly not liberal, not woke. They are definitely on the other side of the political spectrum. And they are active. But they view themselves, and I think rightly so, as a social group more than anything else, where it's a lot of veterans, really, who come together, and others as well. It's not exclusively a veterans group, but there's some veterans in there. But they come together for support, to talk politics online. And that's what they were doing today, talking politics. One of the Diagolon members hosted a Twitter space, which I did receive a link to, so I attended to hear what they all had to say in this Twitter space. And it was a pretty large group of participants today. It was I think an eye-opening discussion. I have to say, through everything released today, these documents so far, anything I've read, anything in the condensed reports that we've seen, the stories, anything coming out really hasn't been a revelation to me. I kind of knew all this information from before because Jeremy came on this program, told this story before. He's shared this story on other media outlets before. We heard this kind of testimony come out during the Emergencies Act inquiry. Police testified to this exact information. Actually, if you go back, and I watched every minute of that Emergencies Act inquiry day after day after day, and we live streamed it all right here on this channel. So I watched it all, and I can tell you that this information was already out there. Police acknowledged these things before. So in that regard, in that respect, it's not anything really, to me, it's not a big bombshell. I suppose the big bombshell is that they have it now in documents and in writing through documents that previously had not been made public. Although I can also tell you that there was a lot of evidence surrounding all of this in the form of documents that were released that you could download off the Emergencies Act inquiry website. I believe that data is still available. All that information is still available. There is just a gigantic repository of information on the website of evidence that wasn't actually addressed during the public sessions of the EA. You can find all kinds of information in there, all kinds of documents that did have an impact on the hearing and on Justice Rouleau's decisions and recommendations at the end of the process. And there were a lot of police documents in there too, even criminal records with some redactions for a lot of the witnesses who testified who had criminal records. So you can find all of that information as well. It was all up there. I think it's still available online. So I just put that out there too, because really this story has already been told, but now it's being told again because we just have this new treasure trove of documents to, I guess, further confirm and show the world how crazy things were during the Freedom Convoy and how the government response was literally so over the top. Justice Rouleau came out at the end of it and said that he felt that the use of the Emergencies Act was justified. That disappointed people on the freedom side of things, to be sure. But Justice Rouleau also said that someone else sitting in his position, presiding over the Emergencies Act inquiry, might just as easily have come to the opposite conclusion. Well, these new documents, the Diagolon social group members, I think tonight are hopeful. They're hopeful that these documents will help retell the story in an effective way so that the general public is persuaded to side more with them and become more sympathetic even now to what happened during the convoy. And I think that on the public relations front, the freedom side with regard to this is sort of winning. Now, there are still huge divide. There's a huge divide out there. Politically, people remain polarized. And as I've said for a long time, there are two truths out there. There's this truth, and then there's also the truth of the people who didn't like the honking. I got an earful from someone who lives in Ottawa this past weekend when I was in Toronto, and this person was from Ottawa. A bunch of people that I met were from Ottawa over the weekend, and I got an earful from some of them because of exactly that. For them, their truth was the convoy was annoying, and they didn't like the horns. And I got a lot of this. It also opened my eyes and showed it revealed to me how they view me, which is I'm viewed as some sort of a almost radical, right wing, far right, crazy guy. But all the people who were accusing me of that on the weekend don't actually watch this program. They don't really know what it is that I asked them. Do you ever watch? No. Well, how do you know what I think? It's just guilt by association with people that are guilty because they're associated with somebody else. And just because the mainstream media told them that those people over there can't be trusted or you shouldn't like them. And honestly, it's a cliche that people buy into. That's what's going on. But today, the Twitter space, let's get to that. Just going to let a little bit of this roll. No, we're going to let a little, quite a bit of a little bit. Because this will help you kind of get a feel, an indication of what this was all about. This is the Ferryman's Troll and Jeremy McKenzie kicking things off during today's Twitter space dealing with this subject matter. Oh, hang on a second here. Hang on. Got the wrong thing up. Where'd we go? Oh, there we go.
Anyways, a year and a half. I mean, it
Let
goes
me
back
just
further, but specifically towards the
rewind it just a touch.
kids. These kinds of narratives, or in the case of Jeremy, he wants to start a race war. This type of nonsense. But because it's through a third-party source, right, that has this kind of air of professionalism, it's taken seriously. And this is exactly what happened with the Freedom Convoy in particular. The Canadian Anti-Hate Network spent about a year, anyways, a year and a half. I mean, it goes back further, but specifically towards the Diagolon thing. They spent a year cultivating this narrative that we were a far-right militia, that we were a neo-fascist accelerationist movement, that we were all these things that we're not. It was a meme. It was a meme. It was fans of Jeremy McKenzie's podcast, and that got together and started having barbecues. And because they were so scared of this, that they construed it into being something that it absolutely was not, never was going to be.
Yeah. And at this time, this was at this particular time, late 2021, I think, late summer, early fall, right around the election time. That's when this, now infamous photo going around where the guys are, I'm in there with the masks on and the guns and the flag. Ooh, scary. That was done as a jab at the Anti-Hate Network for saying the things that they were saying. So we thought, let's just post a photo and watch them lose their heads and blow up. Hope with the intention, I thought the media were a little more mature and adult than this, and they would have looked into this and investigated and asked questions and said, oh, well, this is just people. They're making you look dumb. They're doing it on purpose. No one did that. They just copy pasted, and they took the photo from my Instagram account as if it was some kind of leaked document proving, look at these scary. I posted it to the internet.
Yeah, precisely. And this is what they do. So they take things that they know are not legitimate threats or legit. Like they've taken jokes and misconstrued them. Like, a personal example of this for me is if you Google my name, one of the top results will be a link to the Canadian Anti-Hate Network's website. And it will say the title, they love to do this, create these super inflammatory, headlines. Mine says Holocaust denier travels the country building up newest far right militia, I think was the title, something along those lines. That's nonsense. I made a couple jokes about the Holocaust, and I went on a cross country tour with my dog in a van, and I met people from the podcast community. And they translated that into Holocaust deniers trying to, I don't know, build a militia to murder the Jews, something like that, right? This is how they operate. And they've done this to countless others as well.
Chris Guy is another one.
Yeah, Chris Guy is a perfect example. Like I've already brought up a few. Billboard Chris, Chanel is in here. Maxime Bernier and the PPC in general. It goes on.
Mark Friesen.
Yeah, Mark Friesen. I mean, like, Archer
Pretty much
Pawlowski,
anyone.
Josh Alexander.
Yeah, pretty much
Pastor
name
Henry
anyone in the
Gillibrand.
country. Anybody that's like a right wing or conservative leaning, even populist, anything like that. There's probably some or a lot of the history of the anti-hate smearing these people.
Exactly. So the other aspect of this, like, that's one role that the Canadian Anti-Hate Network plays, which is, basically giving the mainstream media the ammunition they need to go out and then, smear people with this kind of, degree of separation from the fact that they're defaming them. Because as a reference, the Canadian Anti-Hate Network is a nonprofit, which makes it very difficult to sue them. It's very hard to get access to their books and all this kind of nonsense, right? So it's one thing that, the Canadian Anti-Hate Network does. The other thing that they do, which is a little bit less known, I think, is that they hold a lot of advisory roles and a lot of sway with both policing and the current administration in general. So if you're not aware, and this is up in the nest, Bernie Farber, who is the current chair of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network and one of the two original founders, along with Richard Warman, Bernie Farber currently holds a role on Canada's online safety advisory panel. Now, if you go through the list, I believe there's 12, quote unquote professionals on this list. They're all ideologues of the highest order. They range from, other heads or founders of, hate organizations to, ideologue academics, people like Stephanie Carbon, Matthew Horwood, Barbara Perry, these kinds of people. These people have a direct role in influencing and shaping Canadian policy. They were directly involved with the formation of Bill C-18. They were directly involved with the follow-up, back in 2022, or was it, 2022? Whenever they were pushing, it was Bill C-10 at the time, right? The online censorship bill. Well, Bill C-10 had a follow-up bill to it, Bill C-36. Now, Bill C-36 was a punitive measures to online harms. So basically, they were going to go after anybody, for hate speech under this new legislation. And it included, retroactive punishment, as in if you had posted something in the past before the bill became legislation, you could be found guilty of it and brought before a human rights tribunal, and face prison time, massive fines, all of these kinds of things. And the Canadian Anti-Hate Network was directly involved with crafting that legislation as well. Thankfully, that one hasn't passed yet, but I wouldn't put it past them to bring this up in the next parliamentary session in the fall or in the winter. But regardless, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here. Another example, though, of them having influence or at least sway within the government is another former board member of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, Emira Al-Gawabi, is now I call it the Islamophobia czar of Canada, the special representative on combating Islamophobia, something like that, right? She's getting paid close to $200,000 a year to tell Canadians that they're racist towards Muslims or something. And this role was created by the Liberal government in January of 2023, and she was awarded that position. So they clearly have a lot of sway within the Canadian government. And it's not just that. If you start networking who these people are, they have connections everywhere. So, another person that is involved in, hate research in Canada, Barbara Perry out of, I think it's the University of Victoria. Somebody can correct me there if I'm wrong. It's somewhere in BC. This is one of these people that currently Cosmin Dzierżda from True North is researching. He's trying to get access to her, list of 300 hate groups that are active in Canada, and it doesn't seem to exist. Like, these are the types of people that are involved in this kind of that kind of satellite around the Canadian anti-hate network. So we refer to it in our spheres as the bigot economy, as in, these people, it's basically a giant grift. They contrive these situations where, hate exists, and then they demand the government does something about it. And usually, what the government needs to do about it, according to them, is give them a bunch of money or a mandate, or a grant of some kind, so they can create some kind of educational system or, propaganda that is used to target, in the case of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, they have a curriculum that is in Canadian schools, an anti-hate curriculum that is circulated, which basically says, white people are racist, you have to let your kids cut their dicks off, or you're a bigot, like this type of nonsense, right? So
I actually, it was in the newspaper while I was in jail in Saskatchewan. Actually, it was talking about that, how it was being introduced into the school curriculums in Saskatchewan, the Canadian Anti-Hate or Anti-Racism Toolkit. You can look that up. This is also being pushed into police services nationally. Police officers and chiefs and so on are being briefed on this information, as is the Canadian Armed Forces.
Yeah, exactly. That was another one too. Another his last name is Arthur. He is a professor out of Edmonton, I think the University of Alberta. And he was tasked, and he has connections to the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, with rooting out white supremacy in the military. That was a story from earlier this year. So again, like, these people are all connected, and basically they all it's basically a giant circle jerk. They all reference each other's material as justification for why we need new laws, or we need grants for this, or we need $300 million for anti-black racism, this kind of bullshit.
It's almost like, they just kind of create this nebulous kind of animus against whatever the target is. And that because, well, who's saying these things? Well, all of us, all of these articles and all of these people. Well, no one has actually done any of the work. There's just dozens of different people echoing the same things. And if you just repeat it enough, it just eventually becomes accepted as, well, this must be what's happening, because that's all I ever hear about all day. It's one of the oldest forms of lying and manipulation that there is, and they're very, very good at it.
Precisely. And so this is how we segue into the kind of Diagolon angle, and why this is all important right now. Now, I don't care if you're somebody in here and you don't like Diagolon, you don't like our politics, you don't like our rhetoric, you don't like our attitude or whatever. That's fine. I really don't care.
I don't like that I shaved.
Yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter. Any of your, because you know what? There's probably a lot of you in here that I don't like either. Okay, and that's fine. Like, for example, I'm obviously, if you're familiar with our work, we're not fans of the Conservative Party of Canada for a litany of reasons. However, I would argue that, I would equally defend the Conservative Party from the treatment that they have gotten from the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. And a perfect example of this is the way they treated the veteran James Topp, right? So they labeled James Topp as some kind of neo-Nazi far-right extremist who's, going to walk across the country and overthrow the government or some nonsense.
And that was because I was I know the guy. He's talked to me a couple of times, and he's, a supporter of mine. That's why. That was their impetus for doing all of that thing. They label him a neo-Nazi, which he sued them for, or sued Global News rather, and Rachel Gilmore.
Yeah, exactly. And like the reason
what they did with that was they used that to then smear Polyev.
Yep.
And they've been continuing to do that with me and with him. So, like, in a direct and indirect way, why this should concern the Conservatives, because this engine of this just generation of hatred, which is what it is. It's an engine that just generates malice towards whoever they decide to direct it towards. They're not going to be safe from this either, and they're not. And they themselves have had to defend themselves against baseless attacks because of this.
Yeah. So if you're a Conservative supporter out there, right, and that's fine. I'm not, but you are, whatever. Have you noticed how the media tries to smear Pierre Poilievre as racist or as misogynist or as some kind of neo-fascist, even though he's obviously none of those things. Well, if you're wondering where that comes from, it's people like the Canadian Anti-Hate Network and their affiliates. It's the people that they work with. They're the ones who create these narratives, and through their, pseudo-intellectual academic, papers and whatnot, they
no one can seem to find.
Exactly. They're the ones pushing this narrative in the media. They're the ones who are referenced whenever the Toronto Star writes an article and says, Pierre Poilievre has dangerous far-right rhetoric and all this stuff. It's coming from these same people. So if you don't like us, that's fine. I don't care. But the reality is we have a common enemy here, and it's the Canadian Anti-Hate Network and the Liberals. Now, why does this matter in relation to Diagolon? Because unlike many of these other instances, we have a smoking gun that the Canadian government was basically acting on the orders of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, or maybe orders is too strongly a way to put it. But basically, the Canadian Anti-Hate Network created a narrative. That narrative didn't stand up to the test of investigation by policing, and the police said as much. This is all this was all leaked in a Freedom of Information request that we were able to get. One of the guys was able to get this. It was, how many thousands of pages is it, Jeremy?
It's 1,080, but there's still other parts coming. This is just from January, I believe, to August of 2022, and that's not the entirety of what was requested. So there may be more yet.
Yeah. So the reason I say that is because there's a huge mountain of evidence showing that
that's not our opinion. That's the thing. Like, that no other, like all of these other freedom groups and all, and that's like, we're not trying to gain clout from this. Nobody's trying to be like, look, guys, everyone has been an interest in like trying to, tear away the mask and the facade that these people aren't massive liars and completely full of shit like we all knew they were. And now finally there it is. They say, hey, the public safety minister goes on TV. He goes on national television and he says there is an organized militia with a steel resolve. They lifted this from one of my videos where I said I had an infinite resolve and regarding resisting them and all of these kinds of things and put the country into a near panic. And that is evidenced in these leaks where you have RCMP officers, inspectors, and all these things saying, where is he getting this information? They're being inundated with media requests to explain this. What is he talking about? What militia? Where? Can you give us more information? And they have no idea. So what the police do is just copy paste things that were printed in the media and give the media back their own comments that they've already printed as somehow evidence that this even exists. So in an indirect or even direct way, you have the Liberal Party of Canada creating an emergency and then compelling its police force to enact martial law and put down a protest based entirely on something that doesn't even exist. I mean, I don't know what else to say. That if that isn't the most insane political scandal of our lifetime, I don't know. I guess we grew up in different places. I don't know.
See, you can make the argument that because obviously the Trudeau government has an endless list of scandals that you can point to, and you can debate and argue about, well, this one's worse than that one, and it goes on and on. Whether it's the election interference, or the We Charity scandal, or the SNC Lavalin scandal, or the Jody Wilson rate, it goes on and on. And the Teflon Don has managed to escape them all. And he probably will with this one too. But there is a bit of a difference here than these other ones. There's a smoking gun here. We have it in these Freedom of Information requests. The Liberal government knew that Diagolon was not what the Canadian Anti-Hate Network said it was. The intelligence services, the RCMP, various other levels of law enforcement in this country have repeated over and over again that there is no evidence to back up the Canadian Anti-Hate Network's claims that we were like, again, a neo-Nazi, a violent neo-Nazi accelerationist, neo-fascist militia hell-bent on creating a race war in a white ethno. There was no evidence of that. There never was. They construed jokes and memes into something that they wanted it to be because it was useful for their grift. That's what happened.
Yep.
And because they convinced the media and the government that we were this horrible thing, the government believed them. Whether they did so, knowing that, I'm sorry, they did know. This is the other thing. They did know, or at some point they must have known, because the RCMP, like I said, reiterated this over and over again, that there was no evidence to support this claim. And this is all available. I mean, I've posted some of it. Kareem Assad's article that she posted yesterday on this goes through this in detail. And despite all of that, the Canadian government decided to, and I mean everybody, from the Minister of Public Safety to the Liberal MPs to NDP MPs to senators to all of these people, they decided that they were just going to run with this narrative anyways, knowing what they knew.
And
they lied.
Also, before anybody forgets, there are still 4 men in jail to this day that have been denied bail based on this narrative. That they're part of an extremist militia that intends to murder police officers and attack the government. How? From their own internal communications, they admit there is no such There's no connection between me and them or any of this. There's no real evidence of any militia or anything like this. And yet, the narrative still is being floated as if that's close to, or that is the truth of what's going on, when it isn't.
And again, too, it shows the massive bias that exists within the Canadian government. Like, for God's sakes, the Canadian Anti-Hate Network only exists because it serves the interests of the Liberal Party who initially funded it. That is the reason for their existence. That is their true mandate, is to basically attack the political enemies of the Liberals, or anybody who tries. It doesn't even matter if they will not go after, say, establishment conservatives like Pierre Poilievre, or as long as they stay within the accepted Overton window. If you're within the confines of what they deem acceptable, then that's fine. And actually, Matthew Horwood from the Epoch Times there posted a great tweet yesterday. It is in the Nest as well. Basically, he asked Evan Balgord, who is what's his role right now? I forget what his role is.
He's like he's the number 2. Farber is the chairman, and he's the head, he's the figurehead. But Evan Balgord is kind of running the day to day. He's probably the executive. Basically the number 2, exactly. Whatever word they have for it. But he's basically running the place.
He's on the board of directors. He writes a lot of the articles. He does a lot of the research. This guy, sorry, I forget what I was going to say about him now.
He's the favorite of CBC as well.
Yeah, well, I guess this is another topic we could get into as well. The Canadian Anti-Hate Network was the primary driver of all of the negative narratives that spiraled around the Freedom Convoy. Elizabeth Simons, who doesn't exist, or there's no proof that she exists, she's probably an alias of some kind, was quoted and spoke directly to CBC, I believe it was. Evan Balgord talked to CTV. Kurt Phillips, who talked to, I believe, CTV as well, maybe also CBC. And Bernie Farber got multiple segments on the CBC during the Freedom Convoy. And Bernie Farber referred to the Freedom Convoy as I forget his exact words, the greatest display of neo-Nazi bigotry he'd ever seen in his lifetime in Canada.
Yeah, since the Third Reich, he said.
Yeah,
it's the worst thing he's ever seen. And the night prior, Derek and I were watching this, but before you came down from Calgary, we were sitting in the room and on the news on Friday night, like the night prior to the convoy, really arriving, you have Farber and Balgord inferring that not just myself, Pat King as well, basically intend to violently overthrow the government and attack people. They said the only way we can end this is with bullets. They said that. I never said any such thing. But that didn't stop them from playing the scary music and running a bullshit Fifth Estate piece, which is, completely full of misdirection and lies, again, based on the narrative created by these people.
Yep. And maybe this is again, like the point that needs to be driven home here is that this was the justification for invoking the Emergency Measures Act.
Yes.
Nobody
wanted to believe it. We've been screaming about it for years.
Yeah, and now
they said, well, it was rapists. There were no rapists. It was arsonists. There was no arsonists. It was they were attacking a homeless shelter. None of this turned out to be true. All these fake justifications that they tried to posit turned out to be untrue. And the elephant in the room is a goat figurine named Philip. That's the reason. That was always the reason. That's the one that got them to sign on the papers and pushed it. And they had to basically, I don't know, some of it. Even at his testimony there, I did go back and watch the POEC, the CSIS director. It seemed like he was pressured into it.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it at all, because we do know that, the Canadian Anti-Hate Network has connections within CSIS. For American listeners out there, or anybody who's, not from Canada or not familiar, CSIS is the Canadian Security Intelligence Services. Basically our FBI / no, it's more like, I don't know what you would call it, NSA or
NSA or CIA kind of, but way more dumb and incompetent. But they have no powers of arrest, but they can do all kinds of shady, gross stuff. CSIS has a history of doing these things. There's a thing called the Heritage Front in the 90s, for example, was the biggest neo-Nazi movement in Canada since blah, 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 blah. But the problem is it was founded by the Canadian Security and Intelligence Service, which then honeypotted guys into it. Had them committing crimes that they could later give to the RCMP to arrest them for, and then say, look at how much money we need to stop the country from Nazis that we created.
Exactly. Like, I want to try to maybe drive this home for the American listeners out there. If you're familiar with Kekistan, okay, the frog country that came about, during the alt-right movement, 2015, 2016. Okay, imagine if the ADL went to the FBI and they said that, Kekistan is a real threat to our democracy. Like they're an imminent terror threat. Okay. And then the FBI, was like, what are you talking about? And the government still decided to invoke martial law or something because of Kekistan. That's what happened in Canada. It seems insane, because it is, but it's also hilarious. And we have been trying to break this story out of, kind of the dissident right echo chamber in Canada for a year and a half. We've been trying to get this out. Unfortunately, we never had this kind of evidence that proves that it's true. That is exactly what happened. Now we have the smoking gun that's like, yep, that's exactly what happened. And so we're hoping that we can finally break this story out and get some international attention on it, because this is incredibly embarrassing for the Canadian government
to consider, for if you're American, or specifically if you're British or New Zealand. What do you guys call New Zealand? Kiwis, I guess. That's probably why, because no one can settle on what the hell they're called. Australians or whatever. The Canadian, these people, security state, briefed those agencies on this as if it were a serious topic, and in fact congratulated one of their agents for managing to pull it together with 15 minutes notice. So it took 15 minutes to cobble together a bunch of bullshit, and they went and briefed international, foreign countries on my personal life and information and all these lies and nonsense, and they had no problem doing it. So now, if this is being literally bad misinformation, bad intelligence is being fed into intelligence agencies around the world, including our allies, who are there. So now we can't be taken seriously. How can anyone ever look at Canada again and go, no matter what it is, they say, listen, America, we got a tip. There's a bunch of guys. They're going to blow up a train station in Pennsylvania. Sure they are. Dagalon country. Yeah,
if you're interested in that, there is a link up. And then, again, this is all true. It's kind of hard to, show in a Twitter space. But it's all there. There is a link to Wiretap Media up in the Nest. The Canadian Intelligence Services briefed Five Eyes on the Diagolon threat on a meme. They briefed other nations' intelligence services on a meme. Okay. Go, Lucas. If you want to jump in here, feel free.
I don't know how to raise my hand. I'm on PC. I don't use my phone as much. But what I'm hearing is that this is basically like the ADL in the United States. And if you guys have been paying attention, which I'm sure you have, Keith Woods and a bunch of us have been pushing the ban the ADL hashtag, which has gotten, the whole planet to look at it, including Elon fighting back apparently against the ADL. And these are the same tactics, run by the same kinds of people. I mean, the ADL says the OK symbol is a white supremacist symbol. I mean,
well, it's literally the same people. They had
right.
the initial grant that I, if I'm not mistaken, to get the Canadian Anti-Hate Network up and running came from the Southern Poverty Law Center. So you might as well just call them the Northern Poverty Law Center.
Yeah. So I mean, look, in regards to disinformation, someone sent me a documentary that the ADL was actually what caused Waco by giving these cops this information that these are terrorists, blah, blah, blah. And also, I was shocked to find, well, not shocked, but they aided the FBI and Counter Intel Pro against Martin Luther King. Now, we know he was a communist asset, but their information aided in his death. So this is way beyond some little organization that's like, oh, we just like hate speech. I mean, like you guys just said, they're connecting themselves with your government institutions. They're speaking as if they're a legitimate source. They fell for a meme. It's like Kekistan. By the way, I live in Kekistan, so it's not fake. Just so you know. But
well, I mean, I was almost killed in prison because of it. I had a bunch of guys were going to stay. I had 5 guys coming at me with shanks because of the shit that they're reading. Right, so I did see a lot of that as well. But at the time, I wasn't.
Documentary, but I was like, I'm so convinced about these people. I don't have to read anything.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, watch this film. I'm like, listen, I've had enough. I don't have to be convinced.
They're acting like a shadow power that is direct. Like that's really. It seems like, oh, why are the for years, like, why are the police doing this to me? Can't they see this? It's like, well, it isn't really the police doing it, is it?
Well, is your guy Farber as arrogant and cocky as Jonathan Greenblatt? Like literally saying,
oh yes.
So they're just as arrogant. So he's like, oh, we just spoke to Trudeau and we had a frank conversation. I mean, these people are so out of their minds. They don't even see how obvious they're making. So
they routinely engage in defamation and slander. They get sued for it. They lose sometimes, but they have absolutely no fear of just saying completely baseless things. Farber just defamed me the other day. I've already got a lawyer working on a notice for that.
In Canada,
he can just go out and say I committed crimes when I didn't.
You guys don't have freedom of speech like we do, right?
No.
Okay, so it's more dangerous. So it's even dangerous for them to defame you, yeah? So it's kind of like a two-way thing, or no?
Yeah, we like it. They try to. It's usually the way it works here is that you can defend yourself if you have the money to do it. But most of the 99% of the people they attack, they can't source lawyers or competent ones or come up with the $25,000 it's going to be needed to run a defamation case, so they could just get away with it.
I mean, look how much money Johnny Depp spent against his wife, for Christ's sake. It's ridiculous. Though here in America, it's even harder because if you're a public figure, and anyone here who has a profile that's big is technically a public figure. So the only way you go in defamation is if like you're some normie at a job, no one knows who you are, and someone calls you a pedophile and you're not, and then you could sue. But here, anyone on Twitter with a big following is technically a public figure. And I actually other people were attacking me years ago. He's like, look, man, you have no chance. Like, the court's going to be them. The jury's going to be them. The things you've said can be interpreted as those things. And you're a public figure, technically. So good luck. And it's like, who has the money for it? That's why they do it. And so, what I'm hearing again from what you guys are going through is that these people are it's a political weapon to protect the party in power. And they'll use anything. And these cops and whoever are just taking orders. They're not being briefed on it's fake. It's not like they're in on it, but they're going to do it. Look, I was in the military. So if you were Jeremy, we weren't able to ask, hey, Colonel, well, what about this? We don't have that permission. We just do what we're told. So likewise, all these,
Well, and there's some. I mean, I go really, really hard on the police and CSIS and everything but there's a reason for that. It's a I'm trying to achieve something, but at the end of the day, like, some humility is warranted here. I'm not a cartoon character. I'm not an unreasonable person, And, you know, for the police to say, well, geez, you know, we got tricked. Well, what can I say? I get it, man. But you know what? Count yourself lucky. At least you didn't fucking kill anybody over it.
Right. And that
We
can
did.
happen. You know, people
Because
can
it happened to me. I'm running around. We're running around some shithole on the other side of the world, wasting people and putting our friends in boxes and sending them home in garbage bags because we got tricked. So it could have been worse, guys.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, shame is a very good, if people can be shamed, that's what has to be used. But the people at the top who are psychopaths, they don't give a damn about shame. Like, how dare you, Jonathan Green? If he knows exactly what he's doing. It's the people that work under them, the cops and other normal people that are like, oh, damn, I didn't know. That's why
that's what we need to read.
Right. That's why, like, this, you know, HateGate and ban the con is going to have to be pushed just as hard as ban the ADL. And I'll do what I can to help from my end, you know, even though I'm an American and Canada's my mortal enemy. I'm just kidding. But you know,
I'm trans, actually. I my first YouTube video I came out years ago is trans because I'm an American in a Canadian body. They won't accept me, but I mean that's how I identify. But it's okay. We'll get along.
Yeah. So I mean, this is and I think most of you agree, this is a global mafia with different names. You know, ADL, CAN, and then friends of this, that. It's all the same people pushing the same supremacist agenda while calling everyone else supremacists and all this other crap that they're not. And so basically, these people were able to shut down the convoy with, you know, bullshit accusations of the convoy itself being Nazism. I mean, how are normal people Nazis, right? And it's incredible how they pulled that off.
Well, I mean, that might be a bit reductionist on it, but what they did do is provide the government with a narrative that they could then use to kind of justify it. So the government probably would have done something about the convoy eventually either way. What the Canadian Anti-Hate Network did was give them an excuse, and they used it. And it was a bullshit excuse. And
Chanel had her hand up there.
Yeah, Chanel, if you want to jump in, feel free, because you're obviously somebody who has been attacked directly by them too, simply for, I don't know, running for school board trustee.
Actually, they attacked me way before that. It was in October of 2021. I had I don't know what went through my mind, but man, I went out there and I stood with Billboard Chris for a couple hours. They didn't like that. So they ended up, like, at that point I didn't even have, like, I had Twitter, but I didn't have my full name on Twitter or anything. They went out and published an article, called me a transphobic alt-right, whatever, like just a bunch of stuff, said the school board I worked for, everything. So they really came at me, and from there I just decided I was gonna double down and put my name out and start speaking more. So that's kind of actually one of the reasons I'm probably out here today speaking on this. But yeah, it's really important that we rally against them. I was just gonna add one thing about Bernie Farber. I don't know if you guys heard, but he, at one point during the convoy, John Kay exposed this. He posted a picture of some anti-Semitic poster that was actually not even related. Like, I think it came from somewhere in Miami or something.
It's from Florida. Yeah, it's in Kareem's cartoon in there on the bottom left. You can see it. She drew it in there.
Oh, okay, yeah. I do have a question though, which is kind of unrelated, but do you know anything about Press Progress? And, like, are they affiliated with Anti-Hate at all, or, like, I don't know, because
there is a connection there somewhere. I can't recall off the offhand exactly what it is, but they have each other's numbers in their phones. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. So this is, I mean, it's not just Press Progress. I know is one. Luke Van Brun, is that his name?
Yes.
Yeah.
LeBron, I think.
Luke LeBron, that's his name.
Yeah.
Yep. He definitely communicates with these anti-hate personalities as well. Look, it's not just him. It's also, what was his name? What's the one from Vice, Jeremy? I forget his name now off the top of my head.
Mac Lamoureux.
Mac Lamoureux is another one. Bruce Arthur from the Toronto Star, Saba Etiez, Erica Ifill from the Hill Times.
What was the guy? Stephen Marr from iPolitics. Get a load of this guy. This guy, Stephen Marr, whoever he is, So the government put out a national warrant for me for a common assault charge, which is insane, which was eventually stayed and let go for no reason. But before that happened, he somehow already knew and approached me for comment about this warrant that no one else knows about in the entire country, including me or my lawyer.
Yeah.
So they tried to blame everything on a flyer from Florida, and then
well, yeah, I can maybe I'll just summarize that topic because it is worth investigating as well. Because the founder and the head of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network has been caught, as Chanel said, in a hate hoax. Basically, what this was is a photo of a flyer that the GDL posted. I'm not going to get into the GDL, but if you're familiar with them, you'll know what the content was. I believe it was about 9/11. I can't recall, but it was a quote unquote anti-Semitic flyer. Now the photo was taken in Miami. It was posted on Twitter 2 weeks before Bernie Farber posted it on his Twitter and claimed that flyer was circulating at the convoy. There was no proof of this. There was no evidence of this. When he was caught by Jonathan Kay from, is it Quillette, something like that. Also, he does work with the Post Millennial. But Jonathan Kay caught him, brought this to people's attention, and then Bernie Farber's story changed into, well, no, I wasn't saying that photo was taken at the convoy. I was just saying that, that similar things were being passed around at the convoy. And this is my friend's son. He saw it and he was very distressed and he sent it to me, that kind of bullshit, right? So he lied, he got caught lying, and then he made up a bullshit excuse. And for doing that, he was rewarded shortly after that with a position on like I said, the online advisor or online safety advisory board or panel for the Canadian government. This is the kind of
what a clown world, man. So you do something wrong and then you get promoted to a higher
Yep.
position.
Yeah.
Well, that's when we did the ban the ADL thing, they tried to blame. Well, first they said it was the guys in Florida demonstrating, the blood people, the JDL, and Jonathan Greenback claimed that they were saying ban the ADL, which I didn't hear them say anything in any video. And then later on, he tried to blame it on Nick Fuentes, which has been banned from Twitter for forever now.
Yeah.
So how did he start it? I know he had like another alt account, but he wasn't the spearheading this at all. So that's what these people do. They try to find characters they can blame, such as the GDL or even Nick Fuentes or whatever, and they try to put it on them because they want to pollute the message. And in our case, the ban the ADL thing, yeah, it started with a few people. Legend has it. It started with Keith and myself. It's a legend. We can't confirm it. And then it went on and it kept going.
Legend has it.
Legend has it. But eventually got so big, there was no center. There's not a movement. There's no one leading it. It just came to life. So they had to try to blame it on someone to destroy it when it really became grassroots on its own. So in your case, I don't know if I think the same thing's going on. It's going to start, right? Like now you just push the hashtag, going to catch on. People are going to say this is insane. Hopefully you get some kind of journalist on board who's brave enough, maybe not even a Canadian, maybe somebody, maybe you have to get some Americans to help. Maybe we could figure something out.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that really is what needs to happen. Unfortunately, yeah. Canadian politics are always downstream from American politics. Whatever's happening in America typically dominates what's being talked about in Canada. They love to make comparisons to what's going on in America. They'll call, our conservative leader is Trumpian. He's Trump-like, right? Even though he's not. He's nothing close to Trump. But this is the way it works. So if this story could just break on, I can't believe it hasn't. There are some American influencers or podcasters that have talked about it before, but never really got into the details of it. If one of them would break this story and just fully grasp what actually happened in Canada, that our government used
you would think
like if
I was just going to say Tim Pool, and I'm
one of these guys.
I'm friendly with Viva Pride, and I think he knows Tim Pool.
Yeah, so
fairly well.
So these guys, and then maybe
Yeah, I didn't think of that
Tyler
sooner.
Durden from what was that? What is that Tyler Durden?
Zero
guy?
Hedge.
Zero Hedge. I mean, these are
Your
people.
favorite website.
Yeah, so these are the people you got to reach out to and get them out there because I'm sure Tim Pool would love to talk about this.
It's one of these things where if we could just break out through one of these major American influencers, it would lead to others talking about it, and this story would go viral internationally, which it absolutely should. Canada is not that. I mean, we're kind of the backwater in global politics, but this is just one of those stories that, it's. I use the word hilarifying. It's terrifying and it's hilarious at the same time that our government is this incompetent and foolish that they could do something like this. I mean, we have had some success, like Christine Anderson, the German politician, the European member for parliament for the Alternative for Deutschland. She knows this story. We should probably get on her and see if she can maybe ask Beth Ann Nodell if she can reach out to Christine and get her to, give this a bit of a push. But all we need to do is break this out of its kind of right-wing dissident echo chamber in Canada, and it could go viral quickly. And I don't want that for me. I want that because it's the truth, and the truth is insane.
Well, it affects everyone because you see these kind of organizations are literally in every country.
Yep. In Australia, you've got the ADC. I think it's the Anti-Defamation Commission or Council, something like that. In England, you've got Hope Not Hate. I think they have some other ones as well. I mean, they exist all over the Western world and the Anglosphere at large, and they all have the same MO, which is basically, subvert nationalism in favor of some kind of globalism or communism to push, the supremacy of one group over another. I mean, maybe we could get into this as well. The Anti-Hate Network is a little bit different than the ADL, as in it's not expressly Jewish. It wasn't founded as a Jewish organization openly. That being said, the two founders of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network are Jewish, are Zionists. They do push Zionist rhetoric, and basically, all of the things that they push on Canadians is stuff that they vehemently oppose for Israel. Whether it's diversity, multiculturalism, sexual and cultural degeneracy, all these things, right? As well, I was wrong earlier. I thought it was 3 of the 6 board members of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. It's actually 4. 4 of the board members are Jewish. And again, I think Lucas, you've made this point really, really well. It's not about if you're a Jewish person, you should not be happy with what these people are doing. They're doing things in your name and representing you that are making people very frustrated and irritated. So something to consider. I don't know if you want to jump in there, Lucas. You had some really good points.
I hope there's hope for people in the so-called Jewish community to realize that, these organizations, they'll be like, well, they're not really us. I'm like, well, they're saying they're you. They're pretending that they're you. They're pushing policies that make you look bad, and you're not fighting them back, and you're just sitting there. It's like, you got to do something. I mean, we were able to get a lot of, not a lot, but several Jewish accounts, like St. Clair, Ashley, whatever her name is, Ashley St. Clair, even the libs of TikTok, Chaya, she's an Orthodox Jew. Even Ben Shapiro kind of commented against it. But it's funny because this organization has been Jewish for a century, nobody cared, and suddenly now it's just a left-wing progressive thing. So, but at least we're getting some Jewish people to turn against the ADL, which is important. I don't care who attacks it. If George Soros says ban the ADL, I'm thinking, thanks, George, because I'm all about the mission, winning this war against the ADL, helping Elon Musk. And Elon Musk made this, he's 100%. He's spoken to Keith, not in private, but openly. He understands. I think he's literally looking at our talking points because I've seen him repeat our talking points. Like the ADL has increased anti-Semitism. I've been saying that. Many others have been saying that. And it is true. It does because, an Orthodox Jewish person is not supporting transgender story hour, right? And by the way, in America, 80% of Jewry are liberals. They're liberal. So there's a small percent of Jews who are conservative and they're not interested in this stuff. But what's the incentive to go against them? They'll be called self-hating Jews, blah, blah, blah. The point is, it doesn't cost me anything to say, hey, Jews, help us out. It costs me nothing. And it costs them everything if they don't. They look like they don't care or they're not interested. But I'm saying to them, I reach it, look, it's hurting you too. And now they're saying, you're right, it is hurting us. And again, my goal is to destroy the ADL, so I don't care who helps. I don't care if aliens fucking fly here from whatever that
Mexico?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, the paper mache aliens help. So I don't care who helps us, but the point is, we have to always have this message that's palatable to everyone, whoever it is, doesn't matter. And because this is an enemy for, look how many people lost their YouTubes in 2020. And everyone has their Stripe accounts, PayPal. This is all the ADL. ADL got President Trump off the freaking internet. I mean, there was them and other people. And the ADL also went against Mark Zuckerberg, a fellow Jew. Like, oh, well, Zuckerberg was like, Holocaust denial is disgusting, but hey, if people want to spread their opinion, that's wrong. That's fine. ADL's like, no, it's not fine. They boycotted him, 230 companies in a week. He lost 8% of his value of the company. And he's like, all right, I'll do what you say. So,
and this is where the free speech thing comes in. You're either for it or you're not. And that means like you can say whatever, man, but like, no, you can't say anything. Well, no, you can't say I'm going to kill you because that's a crime. And then we have mechanisms in place to deal with those things. But for people saying, espousing opinions that you don't care for and you think they need to be dealt with because it hurts your feelings, you're not an American, you're not a Canadian, I don't know what you are, but you're some kind of person that thinks the world should cater to be the way that you want, and anybody that doesn't fit in it should be dealt with.
Right. That's exactly.
That's crazy.
We have Jonathan Greenblatt on video saying, look, we're not here to stop free speech. Anything that's legal is fine. And then he went 180 when he got power. Now it's like anything that offends certain people, you got to go. And so, he's a hypocrite. He's a liar. He knows exactly what he's doing. He is bullying people. He is talking people behind the scene. I don't care what we're not trying to ban we're not talking to any advertisers. No, they just do exactly what you say. I mean, okay, Johnny boy. So I'm surprised he's not fired for making it too damn obvious. I mean, this is probably the worst thing that could ever happen to these people. But, whatever. Hey, it makes it easier for us.
He's the emperor hero of the ADL.
Yeah, he's I mean, Abe Foxman was like so slick. He didn't even know the ADL existed, But this guy is just like a moron and so arrogant. The chutzpah on this guy is incredible. Which is fine. Hey, Johnny, keep saying what you're saying. It's all good. But we have to certainly team up here. And this is basically an alliance between America and Canada against this supremacist ideology, which again is in different forms. But look, as you mentioned, the same exact MO. It's like they're on the phone with each other. Like, what do we do about this convoy? Just call them Nazis. Okay. And then, lie about them, use fake flyer information. They'll do all that crap. So we have to expose it. And I'm all on board to help you guys however I can.
Hey, I'm on board too. This is Sam Parker. I just wanted to jump in and reiterate what Lucas is saying. Can you guys hear me, by the way?
Yes, we can. Yeah. Welcome, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing this to my attention. Yesterday, when you guys started trickling this on the timeline, I was like, wait, what is this? And I had to go look it up, and I'm like, wait, what? Just
images of meeting a northern wall immediately flashed through your mind, didn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we invaded, Canada a couple times. Didn't amount to anything. But anyway.
Never give up, Sam.
Right. Maybe we will annex you, but then that'll get us labeled Nazis and terrorists, and that'll. But listen, I wanted to reiterate what Lucas said. This is an important fight. We have to be partners. We can be partners in this. And one thing I want to tell everybody on here, and I'm guessing most of the people listening in, this won't apply to, but maybe it will. And if it doesn't, certainly it'll apply to people that you can share it with. And that is, you can't be worried about being called names, right? These people they just like to throw out bombs and accusations to smear you and shut you down. Anti-Semite, Nazi, white supremacist, right? And listen, I'm white. I get smeared all the time, right? I don't care. I'm a male. Men and males get smeared all the time. Whatever. Water off a duck's back. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormon Church, as many of you would know it as. And we get smeared all the time by all kinds of people. Whatever. I don't care. I don't call for any of these people to be banned or to be shut down, and I ignore them. And so what I'm saying is we have to be the same when they accuse us of being anti-Semites or Nazis or white supremacists. Just whatever, don't let that derail you from your mission. Don't be afraid of being called a name, and don't let the name calling derail you from your mission. Lucas has a great talking point. I haven't heard him say it yet, but if somebody accuses you of being an anti-Semite or hating Jews, then say okay, or just say no, I don't. Name a Jew I hate. And that just and then they won't be able to, and then that shuts it up right now. I don't know, Lucas, he might want to jump in with. He's got some great.
Yeah, but the argument's basically, if someone calls you a murderer, you have victims. Right. Well, name the victims. Okay. So if someone says you're an anti-Semite, name the Jews. I say, well, why don't you name me the Jews that I hate so much? And either they go themselves or all of them, like, well, they're committing a fallacy here. I could say, look, I don't like Soros or Epstein. Do you like Epstein? Of course, they cannot say, yes, I like Epstein. I hate Epstein. So I guess I'm a Jew hater in that regard. I don't hate all Jewish people.
In our case, or mine specifically, personally, anyway, one of the, I've been very, blessed to have so much help and assistance and support from so many people across the country, and my community and supporters and so on. But one of the more prominent figures to go out of his way to support me and start a fundraiser and committed a significant amount of his own money to it was Viva Fry, who is now in Florida, and he's originally from Canada, and he's a Jew.
Yeah, no, there are people out there who, again,
so
Jewish people that are
good. If these accusations are at all accurate, like, why would I have anything to do with someone like him?
Right. Exactly.
It's nonsense.
We got to form alliances, and right now we got to take down these networks. We've got to take down the ADL. We've got to take down, the anti-hate network, and whoever will join us in this fight, they're my friend. They're my ally, and let's go arm in arm, and let's take these organizations down.
This is one of the things, obviously, that was so great to see, the like a real white pill about the ban the ADL movement. Everybody could get on board with it. Like I said, from the hardest core of ultra nationalists to Christian nationalists to whatever conservatives, social conservative, all shades of the right wing sphere could get behind. Like, yeah, these people need to go, or at least they need to be put in their place. So It was really good to see nobody like, I didn't see anybody counter signaling the ban the ADL movement for the most part, which is so rare now from the right wing sphere in all countries.
You know why? Because we didn't exclude Jewish people or any other race, and that's the thing about Spurgs. It's only anti-white. It is anti-white, no question. White people and white Christians are the number one target of the ADL, but even other people were saying that for us. Like, black guys, like, yeah, absolutely, it's anti. But if we were like, no, it's just anti-white and everyone else doesn't matter and Jews can't help us, that's when it gets, like I said earlier, we had Jewish accounts, very big names, saying the same thing, because it's an open door for everyone on the right wing, if you want to call it that. And these people also have to step in line. Like I said, Mark Zuckerberg, a fellow Jew, he had to step in line with the ADL. And he's not even conservative. He's liberal. So it's anyone who goes against their supremacist ideology. And by the way, the ADL, a lot of their hate things are all anti-Zionism. Most of it's anti. So even when there are Jewish people like Roger Waters, I don't know if he's Jewish or not, but that's anti-Semitism for going against Zionism. So there are Jewish people who are against Zionism, like Miko Piled or something. They're probably anti-Semites too. So a lot of the stuff the ADL does is pro-Israel. And like you said, this guy who runs the Khan network or whatever, he's, pushing one thing for the Israelis and the opposite for Canada. It's the same here, Jonathan Greenblatt pushing all sorts of degeneracy, Boy Scouts, transgenderism, all this crap. But in Israel, they support the settlements, they support the borders, they support Jewish nationalism, it's the same MO. But what got the ADL Ban the ADL movement so big, it's because we didn't exclude anyone, because we said, look, this is the enemy of all people who believe in free speech. And I don't care if you're born Jewish, black, green, orange. If you want true free speech, even if you find it offensive, you're good to go in this mission. And that's fine. Like I said, if Jacob Rothschild wants to do it, hey, Jacob, thanks. Your dynasty sucks. You destroyed Europe, but thanks for posting ban the ADL. Thanks, George Soros. But they're not going to do it, obviously. But
No.
you know, I'm just making a joke there that any person who's saying ban the ADL, or any person in your end, even Viva La Fry, whoever they are, their birth does not matter. It's their principles. And if they're helping us and helping you, they should be on board. The second you exclude people, that's where it all fails. So that's why ban the ADL was 100% successful. And, you know, then the people who resisted were the people against free speech. You know, all of them. There are plenty of them from the left who were like, oh, this is anti-Semitism. Oh, Jonathan Greenblatt said he's attacking the Jews. Really? Are you saying that you represent all Jews in the world? Because these other Jews, Laura Loomer was attacking it. She's Jewish as hell, and she's a Zionist. She's not like a madman Zionist to destroy America for Israel. She's Zionist enough, but she's not actually Zionist enough for AIPAC to support her, because she believes in free speech. She doesn't want dual Israeli citizens or any dual citizens. She puts America first. So she's not Zionist enough. So even she gets crap from them, because you have to be a freak hardcore Zionist to be getting funding and all that. So Laura Loomer is a white supremacist, according to ADL. Dinesh D'Souza, who was born in India, he's a white supremacist. All the black people who helped, all the Jews, they're all white supremacists. So this is how stupid it's getting. So when you have a movement like this, and if you guys replicate what we're doing, you will succeed, because everyone on board in Canada who's right-wing or conservative or believes in free speech, even if they're liberal, will help you, and it'll be unstoppable. It'll grow on its own. But the second you seclude a group or exclude a group, that's when it falls apart. And that's been the failure of identity politics for the last 8 decades has been, it's me, not you. And that's the problem. So I just suggest to all you guys, you know, and you're going to do it naturally anyway, because you're all smart, don't exclude anyone who believes in free speech, anyone against the Trudeau tyranny, help do this, and it will work.
Yeah, there will be plenty of battles to fight in the future, right? But the first battle is you got to win the battle for free speech, and that's first. And then you can all have you sort out the rest of the problems later.
Yeah.
But you can't sort anything out if you can't have free speech.
Yeah, exactly. Like in what Alex was saying earlier, like with the conservative, like we have a lot of problems with the Conservative Party, but at the end of the day, if we don't help each other with this, neither of us are going to make it.
Well, the conservatives have to understand they're going to be called bigots already. If they believe in 2 genders, they're bigots. If they believe in transgender story is bad, they're bigots. If they don't support, right? So
I'm laughing, Lucas, because the problems that we have with our Conservative Party are that they don't believe those things. They're pretty much liberals. That's why we're. But it doesn't matter. Even despite that, even despite the fact that they're cucks beyond all belief, they are still attacked as being, you know, fascist or racist or all of these, you know, buzzwords. So yeah.
I mean, the conservative, like, look at the conservatives here. What are they conserving? They have Bruce Gender on Fox. That's what I call him, Bruce Gender. They have Lady MAGA. It's like, come on, guys. What's next? Charlie Kirk is going to do a drag queen story hour himself. I mean, you know, that's the thing about they only conserve the victories of the left, because the left pushes hardcore Saul Alinsky tactics. They don't care what, they don't have any morality. They just push. And the conservatives, okay, hold on right there. We'll hold it right there. I mean, like gay marriage, for example, Obama was against it. George Bush, now it's like you have to be gay. You must be gay now, otherwise you're not an American. So it's like things have changed, and now we have to push it.
Well, and that's right there. That's the crux of the whole issue for me, is because politicians will just go with whichever way the wind's blowing. They don't care. If it became, for whatever reason, culturally popular, 75% of people tomorrow were like, we think the age of consent should be 5 years old. You'd be having politicians everywhere, you know, echoing and doing that, because they're just chasing power. Now the problem is things like the ADL and Khan and all this, they're the ones directing which way the wind blows. they can just try to manipulate and create these narratives to have the wind artificially look as though it's blowing a certain way, and they just go with it. That's got to stop.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that your intelligence community is getting intelligence from them, quote unquote, is just ridiculous. It's like an NGO that has no real power, apparently, is actually telling your intelligence communities what to do. Like, again, the ADL trains the FBI agents about anti-Semitism. They were sending police to Israel, and police were reporting, if we did this in America, we'd go to jail. And they had to cut the program off. Just recently, they cut it off because it was the militarizing our police. So it's funny because they say we're going to protect, marginalized community of color, and then you bring the police here and they're shooting everyone. That doesn't really make sense.
Well, and you'll see in these dumps, I keep calling them leaks. They're not leaks. We asked for them. We were given them legally under the Freedom of Information Act of Canada. But you'll see in there, like, some of their own officers are saying, there's no evidence here. Like, this isn't. We're falling into a media rabbit hole and so on, and they were disregarded. So the police seemingly don't have operational independence or something somehow, because if they've determined that, there's no threat here or something's, along those lines, but the state proceeds anyway as if there was. So what does that mean? Does that mean the government just, like, no one's in charge? It's just a free for all, and they just do whatever they want. And again, like he said, we have the evidence. It's all there. We're not making this up. So who wants to go first? Like, what are we going to do about this?
Lucas actually just brought up another good point too, regarding, like, a lot of these organizations are involved in training, whether it's law enforcement or others. And the Canadian Anti-Hate Network has received, Lee, if you want to jump in here, because I know you are up the speed on this, but they were receiving tens of thousands of dollars to train teachers in, I believe, Ontario schools, one of the provincial, school systems in Canada. Additionally, they have their own, I've brought this up already, but they have their own curriculum that they issue, basically an anti-hate curriculum that is being taught to elementary school kids. Basically that all the founding fathers of Canada were racist, vile, evil people, and that our history is just genocide, and that we, just the stereotypical, white man bad.
But Israel's isn't.
No, exactly. Well, actually, yeah, that was another one that I wanted to jump to as well. Bernie Farber, 20 years ago, or maybe it was even soon, he was a big supporter of the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. He was pushing them. He was on the now defunct Sun News Network talking about how Islamofascism is the biggest threat to democracy, that we need to deal with these people. And, now that those wars are over and they've displaced millions of Muslims, many of whom have now, found their way to Western countries, now he's pushing the opposite narrative, that Islamophobia needs to be combated, that it's white supremacy that's a threat to democracy.
Well, that's the whole plan. You see, you blow up these countries, get these people, they're the bioweapons. Then when they get there, now you can't talk against them, and now you can't send them back, and then they destroy. That's how it is. It's literally a plan. Bomb the countries, cause the refugee crisis. They come into your countries, and oh my God, no, you can't say anything about it. And then, and again, can you blame these people? We are literally, not us, but our governments are destroying their countries. I don't blame any of these refugees or the people from South America trying to escape the cartels. They're just innocent people looking for a better life. I don't hate them. And it's the politicians I remember listening to an interview. This person spoke to one of the Africans who just landed in Italy. And he's like, where are you going? He's like, oh, we're going to Germany. They have the best stuff. It's because the politicians are giving them free stuff. If there was no incentive to come to Germany or Italy or anywhere, they wouldn't be there. You know what I'm saying? So it's weaponized immigration is what I call it, pretty much. And instead of invading with the military, you're invading with immigrants and refugees, and then they come in, they can't assimilate. They don't even want to. They actually want to destroy you because they hate you for bombing their countries. It's a big disaster, but it's all calculated in that way because these groups know what they're doing.
And all of those things you just said would land you a Canadian Anti-Hate front page article in this country, and then you
of course.
and then you would get debanked and all the rest of
Yeah,
it.
and that's insane. It's incredible that these organizations, NGOs, can just say whatever they want about you, and the government responds to it. And then people, yeah, freedom of speech. The government's not locking you up. Yes, they are. The government. I mean, look, they don't. That's another thing. People say private company, this and that. I had one guy trying to claim in one of our spaces of, well, the ADL could use its power to do what it wants. I mean, it's free speech. I'm like, listen, they're extorting people, they're threatening people. I don't care if it's okay to do that. They're basically a mafia. It's like they walk into your bakery and go, yeah, you have a nice bakery here. You know, it'd be ashamed if it caught on fire for no reason. We better pay up, for protection. That's what they're doing. I don't care if it's legal under, you know what else was legal? Discrimination, genocide all over the world in different countries. That was legal too. So it's like these people are just hypocrites, and that's why I don't argue with them. You got to argue with the people on the fence. Like, well, what's going on? Like, I didn't hear about this until I saw this post. Literally, I was like, what the hell's con? So I was like, all right. So a lot of people don't even know this is going on, but this is perfect timing because the band, the ADL, just fizzled out. And by the way, purposely, because they shut it down day 3. I mean, we were trending and all of a sudden vanished. So now if we help you guys out, it'll spark another. And but look, there's even one in Canada. And if Elon Musk says something, even better, I mean,
I'm sure there's a subsidiary, there's a franchise in every Western country. There is.
I'd like to dovetail in on that if I may. Can you guys hear me? I'm having a little. Okay,
yes, sir.
Good. Listen, to dovetail on what Lucas was saying there, and just provide a few more insights to why the ban the ADL movement was successful. I think originally one of the most important, most critical factors is that Keith Woods was, legend has it,
allegedly,
everyone knows
he started.
Allegedly, was able to distill the problem down into a single tweet with a couple easy to grasp graphics, and it was basically how the ADL had led an advertiser boycott, fighting, and it had cost Twitter 60% of its revenues, all in an effort to shut down free speech. He was able to distill these, and that for that reason we should ban the ADL from Twitter, and that resonated with people, and he was able to distill it, the idea and most of the idea into one tweet. Okay, and then allegedly Lucas, myself, and some other people had mountains of material saved up on our devices, exposing the ADL, and we just started bombing the internet. So what I would say is, everybody listening to this, you need to start gathering. Number one, you need to be able to distill this problem with the Canadian Anti-Hate Network down into a single tweet or one or two tweets, maybe a graphic or 2 or 3. Something that's easily digestible, easy to understand, that's motivating and common sense, something that you can build around, something that's a foundation stone for the movement, for the idea, and the zeitgeist. Because I saw some of the documents and stuff going around today. It took me a while to wade through some of it, kind of start getting my head around it. You need to be able to distill it down to something very simple that then can then be built around. That's number one. Number two, everybody listen to this. You need to start, going through the media archives, anything you can on these people and what they've done over the last year, the past several years. Start digging up the dirt, clipping it, making memes, composing tweets, graphics, whatever you can. Start gathering ammunition. Okay, you've got to have that initial ammunition to build on that tentpole idea, that tentpole tweet, and that's what we did, and we were able to build around that. It was able to catch fire and gain a critical mass. So when you do this campaign, when you really launch this campaign, this is what you need to do. I think you need to be able to distill it down into a basic set of ideas and have a lot of material ready to go that's also easily digestible, that can just create dominoes like a snowball effect. And that's what you can start doing right now.
Right, because not everyone's intellectual or have the time to here's a PDF of 1,000 pages. So what you need to do is the reports that you guys have that prove irrefutably that they got a meme as a threat to this, system is what you need to clip. And then if anyone wants to source, because here's the thing, if you here's what I noticed about Twitter or X, which sucks. If you use a link to anything, YouTube, this thing, it punishes the post. So, you post a clipping of something, like this is from this article. Underneath that, you can put another tweet. Here's the full document if you want, or if someone, because most people might not ask, but some do, like, well, where's the original source? Don't put it in the same tweet because then you won't get traction. That's why I literally upload videos in full. Like I'll get a video from YouTube, the JFK thing. I'll download it. I'll put the whole video in my thing, because if I go to YouTube, it'll never catch. So that's the one thing I want you guys to know. So what I would do is get all the irrefutable, clips and highlight them. Like, here's exactly when the government said Diagolon was a threat to society. By the way, this is a meme, LOL, holy crap. And then put that up as a tweet, and then we could reblast it and retweet it. As Sam said, it's got to be simple, because most people, unfortunately, are lazy or don't want to read, and again, they're not going to do it. So quick retweets is what or reposts, whatever they're called now, is crucial. Because keep it simple and keep it stupid, because most people are unfortunately simple and stupid. But
it's actually what the enemy is doing as well. I think Ferry brought up earlier that they were bringing it into the school curriculum, and if you look up hatepedia.ca, you can see what they've been planning on teaching the kids, and using our symbol as a hate reference or a hate symbol alongside the old Ontario flag, Kekistan, and everything else. It's funny to us. Like, we've had barrels of laughing about this, but when you get down to it, that's a pretty serious mistake they've made.
Well, it's going to destroy their credibility. And so what you do is you destroy their credibility, and then you go and like when ADL was trending, I was sitting here Googling ADL against Christians, ADL Boy Scout, ADL, and I found out the ADL pushes transgenderism in the Boy Scouts. The ADL doesn't like Christian nationalism. So anything you could put up on this group that said something bad, that said anything, and say, look, these people are behind the Drag Queen Story Hour. These people, every possible moral thing that would disgust a conservative, you need to pull up, screenshot it, highlight it, and make it a meme, and then post it. Like you just said, you said there's a curriculum. Here's what Khan wants your kids to learn. Here's the curriculum. Highlight it. Boom.
There's an interesting recent one from August 30th of this year. Actually, it's up in the Nest. A screenshot of the article. I'll just read the headline. And quote, parental rights, end quote, policies emerging across Canada that critics warn could impact at-risk trans youth. More provinces are instituting school policies that could potentially lead to outing transgender students to their parents, but may also violate children's rights. So basically, this is something that's relevant in Canada. I don't know if you guys have this, but everything is watered down and the light kind of diet version of what you guys get in the States. So while the some of the conservative American states are outright banning conversion for children, Canada is trying to force teachers and school administrators to tell the parents whenever their child is transitioning. That's where we're at. Like that's how bad it is here.
And I don't know if people remember this or not, but the person that started this off in the schools, this also brings it back to the provincial government as well. Doug Ford promised he was going to get this terrible school curriculum out, and he never did. So just because the federal conservatives are going to promise you something doesn't mean they're going to follow through. And that was done by Benjamin Levin, Uncle Benji, who was of a certain faith, was writing in this trans ideology and gender unicorn and all of that stuff. I mean,
he was a convicted pedophile, wasn't he? Wasn't he already convicted of child sex crimes when he did this? The government paid it. The government of Ontario, literally, no exaggeration, paid a convicted child molester to write the school sex ed curriculum, which they used.
Clip that shit, man. Make it a meme.
Yeah.
Well, this was actually Faith Goldie's find back in the day, and that she's another victim of anti-hate because they went after her. Evan Balgord was John Tory's personal assistant, and that's who Faith Goldie was running against during the Toronto mayoral campaign. And Bernie Farber was the one that I believe started the government's audit of her campaign.
They didn't even let her speak, right? They
It
didn't even
was
let her go on stage.
Evan Balgord, and as soon as they won their audit, Evan Balgord got a hold of all of her donors and ended up publishing them. And I put out the tweet also about Faith Goldie when she was running for mayor. They were crowdfunding money to specifically target her, and they've done this in the past as well. They'll literally target people for their political beliefs and destroy you. They did this with the Nationalist Party, with Travis Patrone as the leader. They got a hold of all of their supporters and threatened to dox every single one of them if they didn't call into Elections Canada to renege their support. They're disgusting.
And they literally ran Faith out of town.
Yeah, I haven't seen her at all. Is she still on here or is she gone?
She's got her platform still, but she's being a mom right now.
Yeah, good for her. Get her out. I mean, look, it's she's done what she can do. Not everyone can do everything, and there's times where you have to just let go. But yeah, I remember her campaign. She couldn't even speak on stage against whatever that was, and you know that's what these people do. Yeah, they just that's what they do. So, you know, this is a threat to everyone, everywhere in the world, because as I would assume, and I'm sure you all agree, that they have these things all over the world. They don't have them in Africa or China, probably. In the West,
that's true. Like I see the similarities between the States and us, but I imagine. Oh no! Wait, the UK has Hope Not Hate or something, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't even tweet something or post something that's offensive. You can go to jail or get fined for your social media posts. They're really bad over there. Yeah. So this is a threat to all the West, and we cannot lose this battle. And you know, whether Elon Musk sues or not, it doesn't matter. It's this light that's been shown on these people and people like them. And if we could show there's another one like them, which is in your case, Khan, you know, there you go. We got another country under siege by these people with the same ideology, the same rhetoric and MO, and we just got to get it out more. So what I take what Sam says, you know, break it down, make these memes. I'll repost as many as I can. I'll help as long as I can. I'm sure Sam will. I'll try to get Keith on board. We'll talk to people behind the scenes, see if you guys can get some journalists, you know.
Oh, that would be great.
I could send Cassandra a message like, hey, check this out, Cassandra. Maybe Tim will see it. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you for paying attention, and both you, Sam, and Lucas. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to pay attention to our little country's debacle here.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're all Westerners here, and this is an attack on all of us. So even though you guys are just Leafs and you should be raked away,
hey, pretty soon you'll be calling us frostbacks when we're trying to jump the wall to get in there.
Once you serve your purpose, we're invading.
Snow Mexicans.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm here for it, man. I already told you I'm trans-American. I can start talking like this, man. You roll up in here anytime you want, brother. I'll fucking open the doors for you.
I got family in Canada, so a lot of my mother's side and my father's side. I remember in Ontario, I went to Montreal. It was the first time I heard French rap. It was like, what the hell is that? Some car drove by, but no, again, it's we're all Westerners here.
Well, it's and half of my family's been in Canada since the 1700s, but half of them are living in the States. I mean, there's lots of. We used to not. The United States and Canada used to have a border. You could just drive across. You didn't even need a passport. If you were coming from one or the other, we just waved you across because it was like it's all good, man. Like, and now it's turned into this. So.
I made it all the way to Mexico without a passport. This was the 90s, so.
Yeah, things have changed, you know, and they're only going to get worse. There's going to be more police state-like, you know, what do you call surveillance and this, and they want to chip us and all this crap. I mean, that's where we're going at, cashless society, you know, so we got to fight back for free speech, because once they take that, and they've taken it in your country in a way, and certainly England, you know, see, this is what happened. Look at Australia during COVID. Holy God. Yeah. Damn, the cop was like, yeah, I know I'm doing wrong, but I got to get my, you know, even he knew it was wrong. And he was like, I got what to do.
That was great seeing Sean Strickland use his platform to call out Australia for arresting pregnant women.
It's like they're competing to see who can be the most over the top, like who can be the best 1984 country, and everybody's taking turns. But I got to take off here in a few minutes. I don't know if you wanted to open this up for questions to anybody. If anybody has, you know, there's a fair share of the audience here. There's probably people wanting to. But either way, it's up to you guys. I just got to take off in about 15.
So there you have it. This is the beginning of a campaign. And we have the 1,000 pages. I'll be going through them myself. An interesting conversation, to say the least. That's a story that we've shared with you on this program before. And now these new documents, giving it new support, new legs, being distributed. We'll see how far this story goes across social media, and we'll see if it gets any additional mainstream media attention. As I say, it was picked up by Yahoo Finance. Don't know why that particular arm of Yahoo News picked it up, but they did. I found it there. And they basically just reprinted that media release that I put out there. And again, I just would say keep in mind that this is a political campaign, not so much a journalistic exercise. You can assess the information for yourselves. And I would also encourage you to double check information always. If you're not familiar with some of the names they were mentioning, you can always just Google the names, find out what the people there they were referring to are all about, and draw your own conclusions. One of the people that did get mentioned during today's Twitter space was Rachel Gilmore, formerly of Global News, currently, I think, an independent journalist. She posted this on Twitter today. She was in Ottawa, walking down the street. Apparently, she doesn't like her picture taken. This from someone who spends a lot of time in front of the camera, producing tweets or X's. I don't know what you call them these days. But she didn't like her picture taken. I guess it was today that she's making reference to. Not just once, but twice. Let me get. So at first she didn't mind, but then it turned into something else. So I'll let Rachel Gilmore explain by running this.
In case anyone was wondering what it's like being a journalist covering far-right extremism these days, I was just walking home on my day off after getting a tattoo, and a man stopped me and said, "Hey, are you Rachel Gilmore?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am." And he was like, "I know you from TikTok," which was so nice because literally no one knows who I am. So I was like, "Oh, great. Do you like my work?" And he said, "Yes." As I'm walking away, minutes later, I get a message from an anti-racist researcher I know, and he tells me a picture of me walking was posted to a far-right extremist messaging board. They shared it pretty much right after I walked away. I don't think it was the guy who spoke with me, but it was one of his coworkers, and they also shared my exact location. Before I had seen this message, I was already planning on stopping at the mall on my way home, and that takes me right by the courthouse. The one where the trial for the Freedom Convoy organizers was going on, which in retrospect was probably not the best place to swing by. But I hadn't seen this message yet, and I had walked by that courthouse so many times, including during this trial, without issues. As I'm walking by, one of the freedom protesters turns his camera slowly, clearly filming me, and I'm pretty sure he knew who I was. So at this point, I open Twitter because this dude clearly just filmed me, and I want to see if he's posted it online. And that's when I see the warning from my researcher friend. So now I have my location being shared here and some random dude filming me. These are two separate interactions and two separate people filming me. I ended up calling a security contact of mine, and I had to go into the mall, hide there for a while, talk to security, and buy shit so that I could hide who I was and actually go home. Really nice to know that I always have to watch my back in this city, even when I think someone's being nice.
Okay. Whatever, man. What do you, I don't understand. She's kind of a public figure. I don't understand why she's all hung up on people taking her picture anyway. If I'm walking if I'm walking down the street, I'm not as famous as Rachel Gilmore. But if you want to take my picture while I'm walking down the street, go ahead. Don't care. In fact, the law says that if you are in a public place, out in public, you can have your picture taken. If you want to take people's pictures out in public, you can actually do that. There's no law against it. It's because it's a public space. So yeah, have at it. Take all the pictures of me you want. Not that, I can't guarantee I won't break your camera. This one here is military grade that I use so that the lens doesn't crack when shooting video of my wrinkly old broken face. But yeah, you want to try and take my picture? You go ahead. I don't care. It used to be a free country, and I'm happy to. I'll pose for you. All you have to say is, hey, Rick, give me a supermodel pose, dude. And I will strike one up on the spot. Happy to do that. Here's I don't know, maybe it's because she's a woman, or maybe it's because she's afraid of, I don't know, man. Whatever. Elon Musk. This is a post from, I guess, this is a story that is out there claiming that Elon Musk in this tweet says the Ukrainian government called him directly and asked him to turn on the Starlink internet system in Crimea. They called, I guess, in the middle of the night, and I guess, well, Elon had to find a courteous way to respond. Of course, saying, he doesn't really take orders from the Zelensky regime. Interesting tweet. Let's hear what he has to say.
But at the time this happened, the region around Crimea
Hard to hear.
was actually turned off. Now, the reason it was turned off was actually originally was because the United States has sanctions against Russia, and we're not allowed to actually, and that includes Crimea in the sanctions, and we're not allowed to actually turn on connectivity to a sanctioned country without explicit government approval, which we did not have from the U.S. government. So, so basically, Ukraine didn't give us any advance warning or heads up or anything. We just got the sort of urgent calls from the Ukrainian government saying that we needed to turn on Crimea. It's like in the middle of the night, basically. And we're like, "What are you talking about?
You up?
What's it for?" And then. We basically figured out that this was kind of like a Pearl Harbor type attack on Sebastopol, on the Russian fleet in Sebastopol. So they're really asking us to really proactively take part in a major act of war. While we certainly have huge support for the Ukrainian government, the Ukrainian government is not in charge of U.S. people or companies. That's not how it works.
And Elon, if I could just,
but I should say that although I'm not President Biden's biggest fan, if I had received a presidential directive to turn it on, I would have done so because I do regard the president as the chief executive officer of the country. Whether I want that person to be the president or not, I still respect the office. And so if I gotten a request from the president type of thing, from the American president, to be clear, then I would have turned it on, but no such request came through.
That's a really
Wow.
interesting point. And I mean, the what Chamath is referring to is you're now being attacked. I saw there was there was Jake Tapper the other day on CNN interviewing our Secretary of State. He was all lathered up, basically attacking you for this. David.
I mean, it's to his credit, Secretary Blinken was actually quite supportive, despite the absurd, accusations and leading questions of Jake Tapper on CNN.
Yeah, he didn't take the bait, to his credit.
To Secretary Blinken in this regard for not, taking the bait at all.
Yeah. Well, to me, this is an example of no good deed goes unpunished. Because if you had never given,
I hope some good deeds back go unpunished.
What power to possess the ability to turn on or turn off internet connectivity in an entire country, or even globally. Turn it on in that country, turn it off, turn it on. That's amazing. So much power in the hands of one person. And he said no. Didn't want to participate in an act of war. Wise in that case. What power? Scary. Stay with me.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Okay, I just want to take another quick break. I just want to check a detail on a story to make sure it's accurate before I share it with you. So stay with me. I'm going to be right back. Don't go away.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
So, White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby says the U.S. is not paying a ransom to obtain the freedom of 5 Americans held in Iran. But when questioned about it during a news conference on this day, he had some trouble. He seemed to struggle with the answers just a little bit, justifying this $6 billion payment by saying this is actually not American money. It is Iranian money that is being released. Kirby said the money will be held in a supervised account in Qatar, and that Tehran will have to submit requests to draw funds to be used strictly for humanitarian purposes. But that's a lot of cash, a lot of money. And of course, if they get that money in here, then other money that they might be spending on other things over there, that frees up more of that. So I don't know how you really justify anything that you are doing. The withdrawn funds will go directly to authorized suppliers of humanitarian goods like food and medicine, according to Kirby. So he says if Iran tries to divert the funds, the U.S. will take action and lock them up again. Earlier this week, U.S. officials confirmed the agreement with Tehran, in which each side would release 5 of detained or imprisoned nationals of the other. In addition, the United States will create an exception in its sanctions regime to permit South Korea to remit the $6 billion in payment for oil purchases from Iran sales that Seoul had held back. So we don't exactly know what the exact details of the deal are. And we don't exactly know even when the exchange of the detainees might take place. But Kirby says the key next step will be the notification of the transfer of funds. So we have this exchange from the White House for you. And here we go.
U.S. Treasury Department. And the U.S. will have visibility and will be able to engage in oversight about where the money was going and for what purpose. If Iran tries to divert the funds, we'll take action and we'll lock them up again. I also want to be clear. This is not a payment of any kind. It's not ransom. These aren't U.S. taxpayer dollars. And we haven't lifted a single one of our sanctions on Iran. Iran will be getting no sanctions relief. We will continue to counter the Iran regime's human rights abuses. We'll continue to counter their destabilizing actions abroad, its support for terrorism, its attack on maritime shipping in the Gulf, and its continued support for Russia's war against Ukraine. As you've heard us say before, when we're trying to bring Americans home, we often aren't dealing on a level playing field. We have to use the leverage we have to bring them home. They aren't going to be released for nothing in exchange. But I don't think we should lose sight of the bottom line here, and that's that we're working to free these innocent Americans, did nothing wrong, had no reason to be detained, bring them home to their families, bring them home whole and safe again. That's the goal. That takes some questions.
Admiral Kirby, thank you for being here. I know that you dispute that this is a ransom payment. Obviously, many critics of this agreement say that it is just that. So, in effect, they suggest it's $1 billion per American individual being released. So how is this not incentivizing bad actors and rogue regimes like Iran in the future to detain more Americans?
Bad actors like Iran and like Mr. Putin in Russia don't need any incentive to continue to look for ways to wrongfully detain Americans. It's been happening a long, long time, and we have to accept the reality that it could happen again in the future. It's one of the reasons why the State Department has the new designation for countries, a D designation, so that before you travel or you do business in a foreign country, you ought to look and see, is the risk of detention, wrongful detention, high in that country before you go? We continue to advise Americans not to travel to Iran and to Russia and other places like that. But these bad actors don't need incentives, and this isn't gonna change the calculus necessarily of what they've been doing. What it is going to do is get our Americans home. And that's what we're focused on.
But for clarity, why isn't it a ransom payment? I get that it's not American taxpayer dollars, but it's still $5 billion that had been frozen that was not available for use in any form by the Iranians. That $5 billion maybe for humanitarian aid, but then it frees up $5 billion elsewhere to spend. So how is that not ransom payment?
Yeah, so a couple of points here. First of all, you're right. It's not U.S. money. It's Iranian money. It's Iranian money that had been established in these accounts to allow some trade from foreign countries on things like Iranian oil, to allow the Iranian oil to stay on market. And for countries who wanted to buy that Iranian oil, now these transactions largely were conducted in the previous administration, all legal, all fine, but to allow that some of our allies and partners to be able to continue to purchase Iranian oil without being sanctioned for doing so. Several accounts were set up in several countries, South Korea being one of them, for many reasons, lots of different reasons. This particular account was not accessible to the Iranians as others were. So it is Iranian money. That's point number one. Point number two, it's not a blank check. They don't get to spend it any way they want. It's not $6 billion all at once. They will have to make a request for withdrawals for humanitarian purposes only, and there will be sufficient oversight to make sure that the request is valid and that it's going through vendors who we and the Qataris can trust will actually contract for the goods, the medical equipment, the food, whatever it is, in an appropriate way and get it directly to the Iranian people. The Iranian people will be the beneficiaries of these funds, not the regime. The regime doesn't get to touch the money, Peter. Doesn't go to them. They don't get to decide ultimate destination, and they have no direct access to it. Now, your second part of your question, well, won't this just free up funds for them to continue to do bad behavior? They've been participating in bad behavior for a long, long time, and we continue to put pressure on them in ways, I would add, that the previous administration did not do, particularly in terms of their nuclear and ballistic missile programs. They're still supporting terrorists. They're still attacking shipping, and they're still supplying drones and drone manufacturing capability to the Russians. And for all of those things, we have and we will continue to hold them accountable. We've not only added sanctions to them for the way they've treated protesters, for the arms sales that they've provided to Russia, but we have increased our military presence in the Gulf region, specifically to address the attacks on maritime shipping. So Iran has choices to make. They've had choices to make in the past. They've got choices to make in the future. And if they continue to choose to conduct these kinds of destabilizing activities, we will continue to use all the levers at our power, economic and military, to counter that and to thwart their efforts.
Gotcha. Thanks, Grant. John, you just said that Iran was not going to do this for nothing, but didn't they also get 5 Iranians?
They will get 5 Iranians as well. Yeah, Jackie.
Then why did we need to add $6 billion on top of that?
This is the deal that we were able to strike to secure the release of 5 Americans. It would be great, wonderful, if we could just pick up the phone and call the mullahs and say, hey, we want our Americans back, send them back on the next plane. But you and I both know that's not going to happen, particularly with Iran. And getting Americans home requires decisions, sometimes really tough decisions. It requires compromise. It requires negotiations. It requires negotiations with people you really would rather not be sitting across the table from, but you got to do it because Americans overseas in trouble, wrongfully detained, need to know, and their families need to know that this president and this administration will do what it takes to bring them home. We're comfortable in the parameters of this deal. I've heard the critics that somehow they're getting the better end of it. Ask the families of those 5 Americans who's getting the better end of it. And I think you'd get a different answer. We're comfortable with the parameters of this deal. We're comfortable that there'll be enough restrictions, quite frankly, very rigid restrictions on the Iranians' ability to use this money. And we make no apologies for the fact that we're going to get these 5 Americans home just as soon as possible.
President Raisi says it's up to them how they use the money.
He's wrong.
How are you going to guarantee that? Because once the money's fungible. So once it's released.
No, man. It's not fungible. He's just wrong. He's just flat out wrong. The way this deal is arranged is that the $6 billion, which is Iranian money, will go to a Qatari bank, Qatari National Bank. The Iranians can request withdrawals for it for humanitarian purposes, and the Qataris and it will be and us, we will have oversight, sufficient oversight, into the request itself to validate the request, and then to deliver funds appropriate to that request. The money will then go to qualified vendors to purchase and deliver the food, the medical supplies into Iran. So it will go directly to aid organizations or appropriate relevant organizations inside Iran so that the Iranian people can benefit from it. And that's an important point too. While we certainly have issues with the regime, we don't have issues with the Iranian people. And this funding will be important to helping them get over some tough times.
What do you say to the criticism that this is only going to go against all of these efforts to deter Iran from getting a nuclear weapon? I mean, this came right after the IAEA director said that the international community is losing interest in holding Iran accountable, that these violations are routine. And now we're making this deal where they're going to have money to use for humanitarian purposes. But to Peter's point, freeing up $6 billion that they can pull from other places to use for proxy attacks or building a nuclear weapon. How do you argue against that?
I think I answered that question before, but I'll try it another way. We'll continue to hold them accountable.
So we'll just pull out of that. Did you see the UFO story? Well, it's not a UFO story. It's hang on, I think the computer's frozen up here. Here we go. Alien corpses. Alien corpses. Here we go again. Wow. This is being distributed on Yahoo News tonight, and some other media outlets have picked up on it. There it is. Alien corpses shown to Congress as UFO expert forced to testify under oath. Forced. There's a picture of one of the alien dudes. Supposed to be, anyway. It's an alleged non-human displayed to Mexican politicians at in Mexico's Congress. Just to be clear, two small alleged alien corpses retrieved from Peru were presented in windowed boxes in Mexico City on Wednesday, stirring excitement, so it's today, within the UFO conspiracy theorist community. That's what's written here. The event was spearheaded by journalist and ufologist Jamie Mawson, who testified under oath that the mummified specimens are not part of our terrestrial evolution, with almost a third of their DNA remaining unknown, reported Mexican media. The story goes on here and says the claims by the self-claimed UFOologist, or is it ufologist? have not been proven, and Mr. Mawson has previously been associated with claims of discoveries that have later been debunked. He's kind of a cute little guy. Got a little bit of an ET thing going on, but sort of in a sunken face sort of way. What is that? So it says the two small alleged alien corpses retrieved from Peru were presented in windowed boxes in Mexico City. So those look like fossils to me, or plaster of Paris. At the public hearing, Mr. Mawson showed U.S. officials and members of the Mexican government several videos of UFOs and unidentified anomalous phenomena before unveiling the alleged alien corpses. He said, quote, "These specimens are not part of our terrestrial evolution. These aren't beings that were found after UFO wreckage. They were found in a diatom, algae mines, and were later fossilized." Aha! You see, I was right. They are supposed to be fossils. Mr. Mawson told attendees the specimens had been studied by scientists at the Autonomous National University of Mexico, who were able to draw DNA evidence using radiocarbon dating. After comparisons were made to other DNA samples, it was found that over 30% of the specimen's DNA was unknown. So they took x-rays of the specimens, which also showed during the hearing, with experts testifying under oath, that one of the bodies is seen to have eggs inside. Get cracking. Well, both were said to have implants made of very rare metals such as osmium. Ryan Graves, Americans for Safe Aerospace Executive Director and former U.S. Navy pilot, was in attendance, having earlier this year told U.S. Congress of the threat that unidentified aerial phenomena pose to U.S. national security. So back in 2007, Mr. Mousen had previously been associated with claims of alien discoveries. In 2017, he was associated with apparent alien discoveries, but it says here that those claims were later debunked and were later shown to be human children. I don't know what that is. Pretty weird looking. Who knows? Even as they sit there and show you what they're supposed to be, the fossilized remains of aliens, I'm still sitting here wondering if it's true. That's how bad it is. Just look. Don't believe your own lying eyes. True or not true, I don't know, even as I look at the evidence. Is the evidence real? How do I know? Bottom line is, I don't. Speaking of 2017, same year, Jane Fonda talking about Justin Trudeau. This could be today. This was just running on social media. I stumbled on it today, and I thought I'd run it for you tonight because of exactly what I just said. This could easily be today. Listen to what Jane Fonda, she's pretty left wing. This is someone who you would think would be cheerleading the Trudeau train. But no, even way back in 2017, before the pandemic, before everything, before the convoy, before all of that, Jane Fonda said,
when I heard that your prime minister, the shining hope at the Paris peace, at the Paris climate talks, who talked so beautifully about needing to meet the requirements of the climate treaty and respect and hold to the treaties with the indigenous people and so forth. And, such a heroic stance he took there. And yet he has betrayed every one of the things that he committed to in Paris. I guess the lesson is that we shouldn't be fooled by good-looking liberals, no matter how well-spoken they are. What a disappointment. Trump is no surprise. We know but Trudeau, we all thought, wow, cool guy, right? This is all going to be really good after what you've had up here for a while. What a disappointment.
Mm-hmm. So he lost Jane Fonda way back in 2017, and here in 2023, looks like he's losing the rest of the country. Squeezing just too hard. The judge presiding over the federal criminal case alleging Donald Trump willfully mishandled national security secrets has issued an order today limiting the former president's access to the evidence while also barring him from discussing in public sensitive material. A 16-page order came down from U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon, and it's largely in line with the proposals submitted by Special Counsel Jack Smith's team back in July for how national security information at the center of the case should be handled by Trump and his attorneys. In the decision, the judge said, quote, the limitations on disclosure of classified information set forth in this order are binding on defendant and his counsel, and violations may result in criminal and or civil penalties. The version proposed by the prosecutors called for the order to be, and again in quotations, forever binding. Despite Trump's public assertions that, he says that he had declassified all the documents that FBI agents found while executing that search warrant at his Florida resort last year. The order refers to the materials in question as still being classified. So that really sits at the core of the whole issue, doesn't it? So that case continues to wind its way through the system. and we'll continue to follow it. But boy, he continues to have hurdles placed in front of him, doesn't he? President Trump. President Trump. If you haven't subscribed, I would really appreciate it if you would consider doing that, especially if you're over on Twitter. Head on over to Twitter, or not, I'm sorry, Rumble. Rumble, and subscribe on our Rumble channel. That would help us out a lot. Also, like, share on Facebook, subscribe if you're on YouTube, ring the notification bell if you're there. That helps us out. And if you are in a position and able to help support this channel, we really could use the help by donating at freedomreporters.com. That's where most people who donate, and we do get the occasional donation, that's where most people do that. You can also donate on the donation page at maverickdonations.com. That's set up through Give, Send, Go, the Christian-based crowdfunding platform. And you can also donate on Rumble directly through the Rumble Rants. They do allow that there, but we are still demonetized on all other platforms, including Facebook and YouTube. Still not running on the main YouTube channel because of the ban that we have suffered there. And we're just letting that channel take a breather for a little while. Going to let it sort of rejuvenate, and then we'll get back on it at some point in the future. Not tomorrow, though. Tomorrow we'll be on the backup YouTube channel again, all of our Facebook platforms. Not that you can see the news page anywhere in Canada. It's blocked. Twitter, both of our Rumble channels. We're also streaming out to a secondary lineup of channels, including Lori's Facebook page, Kevin Michelizzi's pages, the other Strange Bedfellows channel. We're on Twitch too. CloudHub. You can always find replays of the show on CloudHub, BitChute, and HugeTube. We're on over there. Occasionally we're getting material up now on Brighteon. And of course, live streaming out to Twitter every night, Odyssey. We're on Odyssey as well. So all kinds of places to go watch us, but most people are watching on Rumble. And we have to make some changes to the website because of the censorship we've incurred. The main video feed through our server there was disrupted. So we are setting up an alternative streaming line that will allow people to watch directly on the website at mavericknews.ca. And again, if you're inclined to support the show, donations accepted at freedomreporters.com. Now, hopefully, I will be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the top stories of the day. Thank you, Maverick family, for joining us here on the program again tonight. A privilege to spend the evening with you. As always, love you guys. Truly appreciate it. Catch you on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.